Good evening and welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show. I'm your guest host, Jeffrey Matt, and tonight's show is part one of a three-part series on the social credit system. I want to spend the next hour with you talking about what is this system, where does it come from, who's involved with it, what are the players, what is government's role, what does it mean socially, what kind of technologies are going to be used to make this all come together, and who in the world would want to adopt this system? Is it going to be something that people are going to be running towards with open arms, or is it going to be a reluctant transition? These are all the topics and ideas I'm going to be going over with you this evening. But before I go into that, I want to extend a thank you to Jordan for allowing me to be a guest host one more time. And unfortunately, he's not with us this evening, so that's why I'm replacing him. But at the same time, I want to let everybody know he's coming back to the show within the next week or so, and he's got an update for all of us, including what's happening with him with Gaia, his research society, and maybe even some tidbits about what's happening with him on a personal level. So that being said, I want to start off by describing what the social credit system is and what it's all about. Right now, there's one that's being implemented in China since 2014, but I have a little bit of a synopsis, like a support material that I want to present to you to explain what exactly is the social credit system in sort of an encapsulated way. So let's take a listen.
China planning on going full Big Brother in 2020. China is nothing if not innovative when it comes to finding ways to exert control over their people, and it looks like they're rolling out an entirely new way to spy on the public. Beijing plans to launch its social credit system nationwide by 2020 to rate the trustworthiness of 1.3 billion people by assigning each individual a score. The system will take things into account such as credit history, contract obligation fulfillment, personal characteristics, behavior and preferences, and interpersonal relationships to calculate a score. Once the system becomes mandatory, people with low scores could be punished with slower internet speeds, be denied access to certain restaurants, nightclubs, or golf courses, and restricted from traveling. Scores will also affect an individual's rental applications, ability to secure insurance or a loan, as well as Social Security benefits.
So here's an example of what the system is about. It's going to be live for all 1.3 billion in China in 2020, and the reward and punishment system is going to be revised many times. But I do want to mention this before I continue. I'm not a world authority on anything, and I'm not an expert speaking to you because I have decades of research on this particular topic. I have decades of research in different topics, and this is a subject that I feel is very important that I want to share with you, but I'm not the bottom line on everything here. It's up to you as the listener to take this material, do your own homework, double check what I'm saying, and if it makes sense and you like what I'm saying, or at least you respect what I'm saying, then you can tune in for part 2 and part 3. But as we move forward with these concepts and these ideas, very few people are going to accept a system where you can be punished for who you talk to, what you do in your personal life. Everything's being recorded, in your bedroom, in your car, everywhere you go, in the bathroom, the shower, your kitchen, how you use the water or lack of water or soap and all this stuff. It's really going to be calculated electronically and recorded forever. A lot of people probably aren't going to be real gung-ho about it. But there is one way to get people started on that path to accepting and maybe even running desperately for a social credit system. It's called unemployment. And if you have jobs that are going to be removed and replaced with automation, then what's going to happen is that little economies in small towns, bigger cities, and countries and nations, and actually I don't want to call them countries anymore. I consider all the countries around the world actually just corporations. They're being managed by a very small elite group of people. A few of them, you know who they are. Some of them are unknown. But ultimately, they're not willing to be presented to the world, and it's being done on purpose. But this automation, this restructuring of the world economy and where the real monetary value is going to be shifted onto the individual person. And you better fall in line. Well, here's an example of how the economy is going to be changed through automation. Here are some personal experiences of individuals who have already felt the bite of this change. Let's take a listen.
The reality is that automation has also been a major factor. Manufacturing productivity is no longer directly tied to employment. Output is actually at an all-time high, only employment didn't follow. Around 2000, it fell off a cliff. That's automation, and those jobs won't ever come back. Some experts say automation has contributed to a decline in the U.S. labor force, now at 62.7% of the total population.
So what would you say to towns that are looking out 5 years or looking out 10 years at this upheaval that's coming? What needs to happen?
Oh, don't make the mistake that McGillsburg made 14 years ago. Don't act like it's not coming. It's coming. What do you want your town to be like in 10 years without those jobs? Those jobs aren't going to exist.
Back in Indianapolis, Kathleen works at the same plant that Brenda did.
When you get through with it, if they get rid of middle class, there'll be a whole lot of poor people. It'll be way more poor people than it will be rich. So
There's another example of people who really know what it feels like to be replaced by automation. And as Brenda was saying, if the middle class is removed and there's going to be a lot of poor people, the new middle class may not be what you consider middle class. It may be something way less appealing, and it might be the new version of a middle class, but it may not be nearly as comforting and comfortable as some people are aspiring it to be. And these new automated technologies are going to come in. They're going to replace warehouse workers. They're going to replace all kinds of jobs that can be automated. I mean, Amazon, they have whole warehouses filled with automatic robots that do like 80-90% of the work. All you have to do is go look that up on YouTube. You'll see it yourself with your own eyes. For those of you who think I'm impervious to I'll always have a job for the rest of my life no matter what, then you must have a very unique career, a unique background, a unique skill set, because automation and robots and artificial intelligence all combined will replace you eventually. If you're lucky and you're somehow able to stay ahead of the curve, I'm delighted for you, but the bulk of people are not. And here's an example of what I'm talking about, some of the technologies that are going to actually come in and replace the jobs over the next few years. Not the next several decades or a few 2 or 3 centuries, but within the next 5-7 years. This is an example on how the people who are at the top and understand how these technologies are being put into place, they're preparing for, maybe even what they would consider a societal collapse. I don't think it's going to be the same thing that they're claiming, but there's going to be a big change, and here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Melanie Wise is CEO of Fetch Robotics, a company that specializes in automated warehouse robots.
It's something that a lot of warehouse managers want, where you can turn the lights off in a facility and just have it operating without any people in it.
I asked Melanie if she thought her robots could reduce jobs.
And one of the biggest things that the industry is trying to tackle right now is there's not enough people to do the work.
Hiring has been on a steady upward trajectory as jobs in warehouses have largely replaced jobs in the brick-and-mortar retail industry. But that could change as sales of warehouse and logistics robots increase to $22.4 billion by 2021, up from less than $2 billion in 2016.
We need to rethink capitalism itself. And we have another 5 years, 7 years before it gets ugly. But after in the 5 to 10 year period, we will start to see turmoil, and we will have to start thinking about this. It's time to start learning and adapting right now.
Economic fears have prompted some to prepare for the possibility of societal collapse. Adam Taggart gave up his job at Yahoo to prepare for drastic changes that he sees as inevitable.
Those with the money, and I realize this is the 0.001% we're talking about, but are buying retreat properties either here in America or internationally. And I think that got people's attention of, all right, these are legit smart people. What do they know that we don't know?
Some in the tech world have bought secret getaways, bunkers, and guns to prepare for collapse. They're a minority, though the concerns are widespread. Here's the former chief economist of the Senate Banking Committee.
In a number of realms, we are socially and resource and financially unsustainable. And those unsustainabilities tend to climax in some kind of violence unless they're preempted with intelligent policy.
So if we have automation coming in, replacing work in warehouses and manufacturing plants, and we have this new tax revision in the U.S. code, and suppose that the new administration is bringing jobs back to America, well, that's great news. But doesn't that conflict a little bit with what I'm talking about with this automation? I think they're going to set up a lot of these warehouses and plants, and they may hire individual human beings to sort of set up the shop and get everything running again, and then they're going to automate one department at a time. And it's not going to take 50 years to automate all the departments. They may start out with 10 people in human resources and bring it down to 2. And automation and software will come in. And maybe with the warehouse, they may have 50 employees, and then they'll say now it's down to 40, it's down to 20, it's down to 10, it's down to 6 employees, and that's it. Now they can run the whole warehouse with 6 employees. So the automation, the jobs are going to come, but they're going to be very temporary. And this is what's not being discussed in the mainstream news, and nobody in the whole world of presentations and corporate world, and they're all wearing the $3,000 suits and $800 shoes. They're not going to tell you this. They're making too much money to be honest with you. And they're not interested in having all the flack of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people writing these people in the corporations, pretending that technology is going to transform the world and everybody's going to be living forever. I absolutely go bonkers when I hear people saying longevity and we're going to live, unlimited lifespans and all of the wonderful. You know how many people are going to get access to that? 0.001%. And it's going to get smaller over time. It's not designed for 7.5 billion people to get access to that. That's not the goal, that everybody can get access to unbelievably long lifespans and you have to pay them all your lives and you can just relax and sit around and wait for the next breakthrough. No, that's not how it's going to work. It's never been that way in the past. Why would it be like that now? But people get sucked into this big time. You know, some of the statistics about how severe this automation transition is going to be, I found another excerpt that really sort of breaks it down. I really want people to pay attention to this one. This is really something that got my attention. Even if these numbers are half accurate, it's going to explain how big this transition is going to be, not only in America, but around the world. Let's take a look.
Worldwide, 800 million jobs could be automated by 2030. In the United States, up to 73 million jobs are at risk. Changes like these have taken place throughout history, like the industrialization of agriculture. Only this time, it's on a far faster timescale. Jonathan said he, too, has concerns about job displacement.
Definitely something that can be handled well, as long as governments and policymakers are aware of these changes that are happening and planning for it and preparing for it.
You think we're doing that?
I do not think that we're doing that at present.
Numerous companies turned down requests to talk about the effects automation will have on employment.
You don't want to write a banner over your company logo, "We are America's job killers," correct? So, that's the last thing that you want to do.
And one of America's biggest job killers may be driverless vehicles, already driving on our roads. This promo video shows Google's subsidiary, Waymo, operating self-driving vehicles on the road without a driver to take the wheel if something goes wrong. But companies like Google, Toyota, Tesla, GM, and Uber declined to discuss innovation or jobs, even as they greenlit the use of these promotional videos.
We're recreating a scenario where we've had a pickup truck drive along the track and actually dump some hay bales out of the back randomly. So what you're going to see is our car senses, does a safe lane change, senses the next one, and also then changes back.
The vehicles are arriving faster than many might expect. GM announced that a vehicle without any human controls would hit the streets in 2019.
So there we go. We have more examples of how up to 800 million jobs, and by the way, that's the magazine with Fortune that came up with those numbers. They make mistakes like any other living creature can do, but I'm sure that they did their best to not make a mistake there. That's a lot of jobs around the world, 800 million. 800 million. I think 73 million in America. So even if 1,000 corporations came back to America and set up a plant, and then we hire a whole bunch of people, and then in the first 5 years, 60% of it gets automated. That's it. We're back to square one. Except now it's worse. Now that the plants are all built, the robots are all in, the people are hired to put everything in place. Now the robots and automation are going to slowly phase out all these jobs. People are not talking about this in the mainstream. They're just saying, oh, what will we do? I'm giving you examples of how it's going to possibly go down that's closer to reality than all this fiction that's being pumped out there in the alternative news world. Especially all the YouTube channels that say it's the Antichrist and it's Satan and it's the devil and they're coming to get us all, and we're all, we all have to accept some sort of God or else we're all doomed. That is the most completely useless information. All it does is it paralyzes people who have faith. It's a paralyzing action on the psyche of an individual. Well, if you believe in this God, then this is what the devil's doing. And if you believe in that God, well, this is how you're being punished or penalized for not being good. And so what it does is it paralyzes the mind. It paralyzes critical thinking. And in reality, the corporations move forward, the military moves forward, the countries of what I call large corporations and their product, their people, they're moving forward while you're stuck on YouTube videos on the Antichrist and some sort of nonsensical religious gibberish. And you're stuck on it and you watch 10 hours of it a week, 100 hours a month, 10,000 hours a year on nonsensical stuff about hand signs of the Illuminati and all this stuff. You're wasting your time on the wrong things. When you can't put food in your mouth, and now the only way to do it is to have an ankle monitor or something recording your face, your voice, everything 24/7, you're not going to care as much about these YouTube videos. You're going to start looking at who's talking about the real stuff right now. And who's putting in the time and effort to try to share his or her own research and ideas and concepts with you for those who want to know so you can prepare yourself. Most people are going to, not pay attention to this. They're going to shut this off. They say, "Oh, this is nowhere near as entertaining as the Major League Baseball and football and all that stuff." They're not going to be interested at all. They're going to be interested in something that's going to make them feel good immediately and don't worry about tomorrow. Well, when they have to face this social credit system and they're going to have to accept universal basic income, and they're going to realize that automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics is going to replace their personal value in the labor force, and all they have left is their behavior, they are going to comply. They are going to run for this universal basic income, and they're going to run towards this social credit systems because they weren't paying attention, so now they're stuck. Now there's no option, there's no alternative. Well, universal basic income has been touted for the last 10 years as free money and no strings attached. Something that's supposedly magical. It's going to fall out of the sky and it's going to save the whole world from economic collapse. There's going to be huge, huge turmoil. But for those of you who aren't really familiar with universal basic income, here's a little synopsis of what it's all about. Let's take a look.
What if the state covered your cost of living? Would you still go to work? Go back to school? Not work at all? What would you do? This concept is called a Universal Basic Income, or UBI, and it's nothing less than the most ambitious social policy of our times. In 2017, basic income is gaining momentum around the world. First trials are ongoing or on their way, and a growing number of countries are considering UBI as an alternative to welfare. How would it work, and what are the key arguments for and against? Right now, people can't really agree what universal basic income is or should be. Some want to use it to eliminate welfare and cut bureaucracy. Others want it as a free extra for existing programs, or even want it to be so high that work itself becomes optional. For this video, we'll talk mostly about the minimum basic income, enough money to be above the poverty line. In the US, this means about $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year. The money would not be taxed, and you could do whatever you wanted with it. In this scenario, UBI is a way of transferring the wealth of a society while still keeping the free market intact. But if we hand out free money, will people just spend it on booze and stop working? A 2013 study by the World Bank specifically examined if poor people waste their handouts on tobacco and alcohol if they receive it in the form of cash. The clear answer, no they don't. The opposite is true. Other studies have shown that the richer you are, the more drugs and alcohol you consume. The lazy and drunk poor person is a stereotype rather than reality. What about laziness? Universal basic income test runs done in Canada in the 1970s showed that around 1% of the recipients stopped working, mostly to take care of their kids. On average, people reduced their working hours by less than 10%. The extra time was used to achieve goals like going back to school or looking for better jobs. But if laziness and drugs are not a huge deal, why doesn't our current welfare state solve poverty? Welfare or unemployment programs often come with a lot of strings attached, like taking part in courses, applying to a certain number of jobs a month, or accepting any kind of job offer, no matter if it's a good fit or what it pays. Besides the loss of personal freedom, these conditions are often a huge waste of time and only serve to make the unemployment statistics seem less bad.
Well, there's a brief description of universal basic income, or UBI. I just don't see how it's not going to be the replacement to welfare, because even if it's given free at first, there will be abuses, people will complain, there'll be loopholes of some kind, somebody will exploit it, and they'll start putting in rules. Well, the only way to really nail it down is using a social credit system. If you behave well, you don't misspend your money, and you have AI sort of coaching you through all your stuff and observing you with every camera, recording your voice 24/7, and you have your whole life is completely being monitored, well, now you are going to be asked to follow through. You're being given money for free. I mean, who hasn't at once, I don't care what culture, what religious background, where you live, at least once in everybody's lifetime, we've been told by our parents, even if we were unfortunately orphaned as a child, we were told, wherever we lived, whoever we were under the care of, this is my home, this is my place, this is my food, I make the decisions, I make the rules, and this is how it's going to go down. And you can do whatever you want when you're on your own. Well, guess what? If you are on universal basic income, are you on your own? No. Are you creating and generating that non-taxable money that's being given to you for free? Did you generate it on your own? No. So what right do you have to complain or make comments or have concerns or reject or you just can't. The government is your new parent, and you will remain a child in the eyes of the system forever. So all those people out there who are pounding the pavement and they're hard workers and all that stuff and they don't make mistakes. I know there's people out there who never make mistakes. Can't wait to meet one of you, but right now I haven't met anybody who doesn't make mistakes. Even if you work really hard and you save all your money, everybody has character flaws. Everybody has a dark side. You're not going to enjoy having something tell you what to do all day long, monitoring every aspect of your life. And you're sure in the world not going to be able to get free money with no strings attached. That's why I'm doing this presentation on the social credit system, because there's a handful of us out there who want to know, who want to understand, and can watch the evolution of the technologies, understand where some of these concepts are coming from, and not find out the last second. So you can make some individual, carefully thought through decisions and maybe improve your outcome for yourself and your family. But let's take a closer look at some of the technologies that are being put in place to make this whole thing come to life.
telling you for months now about the growing power of the big tech companies whose brand of surveillance capitalism has come to shape our politics and culture in ways that many people don't perceive. Tonight, we want to give you a very specific example of that. It's both a look into the near future and a terrifying illustration of the control these companies seek over our daily lives. We recently reviewed several patents filed by Google. As we describe them, ask yourself if you're comfortable giving this much power to unelected technocrats you have never met. In the first patent, filed in September of 2016, Google envisions how it could send you personalized advertising based on what a camera observes in your home. In the illustration that Google submitted to the federal government, the Patent Office, a camera in your bedroom sees a Godfather novel on your nightstand next to your bed and uses that to steer you to watching the movie. If you think that's creepy, prepare yourself because it gets a lot creepier. In another patent application from September 2016, Google imagines how it could take control of your parenting, your relationship with your children. Google's smart home system could detect children near a liquor cabinet, for example, or in their parents' bedroom, infer that, quote, mischief is occurring and deliver a verbal warning. In another example, Google imagines a hypothetical child called Benjamin. Google's cameras would be watching Benjamin at all times, carefully. They could see if he's playing outside or using electronics. Presumably, they'd also try to use that information to sell him things at some point, because that's the whole point of Google. The same patent also discusses how the smart home could coach families on, quote, areas of improvement. For example, if a family doesn't spend enough time together, eating together, in Google's estimation, Google might scold them and suggest that they set a goal of eating more often together. That is Google's description, not ours, by the way. We contacted Google for comment on this, and the company, and we're assuming it was a person and not a robot, replied this way, quote, we file patent applications on a variety of ideas that our employees come up with. Some of those ideas later mature into real products or services, some don't. In other words, don't worry, we're not spying on you yet. We just have the patent for it.
So this is the type of technologies that are being put together. This has got to be the most bland, simple example so that you don't get scared. You know, it's going to recommend a movie because it saw a book on your countertop or on your nightstand. People are so worried, sick about making their next credit card payments, their car payments, their mortgage payments, their education for their children's payments, that they're really, so many people are under a lot of stress, and they don't have time to keep up with all this stuff. Man, this is one of the goals of why I'm putting together this 3-part series, but you'll be able to learn more, you know, if you're new to this subject, more in 1 hour than you will for an entire year of watching the news. You know, this is one of the many goals I hope you can reap from this kind of presentation and show. And these technologies that they're patenting up front, they're not using it right away, and so some will, you know, gather dust on the back of the shelf. They're not going to gather dust. If it was a startup in a garage somewhere, possibly. Google, I doubt it. They know what's coming. They're involved with big finance, big government, big corporations, stock market. They have to be on top of the game. They don't patent just anything. So, and that's just the beginning. Can you imagine how many men and women and families out there that are not going to appreciate having a voice come out in their dining room saying you need to spend more time with your children? Do you honestly think that they're going to be really enjoying that? How about children being told in the room, go back out and talk to your parents? And your parents like, look, I'm busy right now, I don't have time. And then Google's AI or some other corporation's AI is going to go through their speakers and say, you need to spend time with your children. Now, who's in charge of the family? Is it the biological parents, or is it the AI? Is it the social credit system that's going to dock them points? Is it the government, the corporate government? What is it? Who's in charge of what? It's not going to be the living man or woman or child. You're going to have a very limited scope of decision making. It's going to be very, very different kind of lifestyle. You know, if you're not getting along with your parents or your children, enter psychiatry, psychology again. They're going to come in and they're going to say, well, are you feeling okay? Then they're going to send people to your home because offices are going to be closed, right? Because the economy is going to be gutted by automation. So they'll just send people to your house. And when they come into your house, they'll record their experience coming into your home. What's the cleanliness? What's going on? How are you behaving? How are you answering the questions? Oh, I sense aggression or resentment, or you're not comfortable. What's going on? And then all of a sudden you're stuck. And if you don't comply, your social credit will go down. You can't get that nice 3-bedroom apartment you need for your family because your social credit's too low, and you're not qualifying to get to that better place in your life because you're not behaving correctly and you didn't follow all the recommendations that AI and the social credit system / corporate government is providing you. Because mathematically it's been calculated through algorithms and big data, and you don't have a say on what is actually considered appropriate or inappropriate. You just have to follow through and be appropriate or be inappropriate. You want to have an idea of where this is all going in a movie that came out several years back. It's called Code 46. Code 46. People who aren't going to want to adapt to this, they're going to be outside the system, and you're going to live with basically nothing. You won't have access to the room, temperature managed rooms and apartments with running water and artificial intelligence fridge and all this stuff. You won't have any of that. You'll be living outside. If you want to see what I'm talking about, just as a small example, just watch the movie Code 46. Buy a copy, rent a copy, check it out on those online things, Netflix, maybe it's on there. But, when it comes to your health, now that we're talking about the technologies, let's look at how the technologies are going to be impacting your life and your health. Let's take a listen.
Let's look at our own health. What's happening now is that we become data and our doctors are becoming software. Let me explain. We wear Fitbits, we wear all these devices that monitor our body's functioning. Move forward 5 years and we'll have sensors in our clothing. Imagine that Fruit of the Loom tag in your underwear, which is monitoring you 24/7, monitoring your activity levels, which is monitoring your EKGs, all these different symptoms that can be captured from the skin. Imagine it being gathered 24/7, being uploaded to the cloud, and having an AI now analyzing the data and say, look, you're about to get sick, you need to get some exercise. And then having all of these cameras and sensors which watch what we're eating and what we're doing and saying, all right, Vivek, you don't need that extra piece of pie. Stop, abort, abort, abort. This is all becoming possible, and in the next 5 years or so, we should be able to build these technologies so we have digital doctors. Now, the second part of it, genomics. In the year 2000, there was a race between the US government and a scientist, Greg Venter, to sequence the human genome. The government and affiliated labs spent $2.75 billion. Venter came up with $100 million. Don't ask how. But he took government data and he sequenced the human genome. It made front page news worldwide. For a long time, nothing happened. We thought genomics was a waste of money. But over the last 2 or 3 years, it's now gone on this exponential curve. There's studies being published very frequently now. Almost every week you're seeing groundbreaking studies about the discoveries in genomics, the correlations between our health and our genes.
So for those of you out there who are looking forward to having underwear that tracks you 24/7 and your body becomes an endless stream of data, and it's going to be monetized, and it's going to be directly linked to your social credit rating based on what you eat, how you eat, the time you eat, who you eat with, your attitude, your behavior, your body metrics are going to be measured if you're angry, upset, happy, and you're going to get constant recommendations from all the different corporations that have their AIs embedded into your home, into your clothes, and it's all going to go to the government and affect your social credit rating. Some people may not be real gung-ho about all that, but it's okay because for those of us who are not going to be happy about it, there's a whole new generation coming up, and they're not going to even notice the difference at all. They're not even going to care. They're going to say, oh yeah, I'm monitored 24/7. It won't even faze them in the slightest. Some of the technologies aren't going to be just checking what kind of book you have in your nightstand. They're going to be checking you out from the day you're born. Here's a couple examples of what I'm talking about.
Several companies make smart pacifiers that double as thermometers. This one is made by Pacify.
What did you think? This was actually really easy to sync to your phone. So this one kind of was in a shape that he's not as familiar with, but I can get it in his mouth and get him to take his temperature.
Even if they're tracking a baby's temperature using a pacifier or any other kind of thermometer,
We really want to know what the baby looks like and how the baby is acting, not so much the number of the temperature itself.
This smart onesie tracks a baby's heart rate, breathing, and movements. Our new mom, Crystal, gave this one from Mimo Baby a try. Her favorite feature, tracking her son's feeding times.
Avery eats every 3 hours, and I am on top of making sure that he's eating at those times. Having that built into the app is kind of cool because it also allows you to keep track of your baby's feeding.
Remember that products that you buy are not a substitute for good adult supervision. It has to go hand in hand with something that an adult would provide.
So if that's the case, then adult supervision, that means the social credit system is going to be your adult, your parent, overseeing your behavior because you're its product, you're its corporate product, and it's the parent. In Latin terms, is parens patriae. And Jordan and I have talked about it. Jordan is the one who taught me about it, how the government can act as a legal guardian or a legal parent. Now, it's most of the time it's described in the regular world as if someone's incapacitated or too young to make decisions, they can act as a legal guardian and take over, and the government can become a parent. That's how Child Protective Services has its power. It exercises those legal powers and then can take children out of dangerous situations. But what's going to happen is that every man, woman, and child, educated, fit people who've got money and they got talent and they got skills, they got everything going for them, they're going to be perceived as an infant child in the eyes of the corporate country that you're in, the corporation that you are an employee of. And your social credit rating is going to be gauging how well you're performing in that corporation. This is really what it comes down to. And if people who misbehave in today's society and they go to court and they get arrested, they go to court and they are given an ankle monitor for house arrest, or they can only go certain places, they have curfews and all that, they have an ankle monitor that does that. Well, they're going to start conditioning all the newest generation, young infants, with not necessarily a punishment tool, but an ankle tracking device that's going to supposedly assist parents, biological parents. And here's an example of a social credit system product that's going to really, really encompass what I'm talking about. Let's take a listen.
This is a job you not only can do, but can own with the help of the Sproutling Baby Monitor. It works with your phone. So, say your baby is sleeping and you just want to know if his tiny little heart is beating. It's perfectly normal. Or you'd like to have an idea of when he's going to wake up. Yep, done. You can even charge it on 0.0 hours of sleep. These are just little things, but they can help you a ton. Be confident. Be strong. Be a life-living, sleep-having, baby-raising badass.
So here's a ankle monitor for parents that syncs up to the phone. What is it actually syncing up to? It's syncing up to AI. It's syncing up to a robot, right? The phone itself. It has a microphone. It has a camera. It has all the software either in the phone or in the back end with the government, the corporations. And the social credit rating is going to be linked up from the moment you put your child on this ankle monitor. Now, people aren't going to understand. They're going to say, oh, this is ludicrous, this is ridiculous. Just wait 10, 15 years. Forget me, move on, watch something else, and about 15 years from now, you'll realize that I was telling you what's actually going to come down the pipe. Doesn't mean I've got everything nailed down perfectly and that I'm somehow the world authority on it. No, it's just that I've done my homework. I've been around very really astute individuals, people who have major accomplishments in their lives, in and outside of corporate world, government, retired, in all kinds of backgrounds and fields, and I've had opportunities, and also with being in the company of Jordan. I mean, you can't get better than that. If you want to know how the world really works, and you want to see the inner workings of some of these things and meet some incredible people, I couldn't have had a better school. I couldn't have had a better mentor. I couldn't have had a better friend. And so this is the outcome of my homework, and it's going to change and grow over time. I still have another 2 parts to go on about this social credit system. I'm just getting started on this. So it's going to get really, really interesting. But for those of you who think, oh, well, I'm not in the stage where I need a baby ankle monitor. I'm not a baby anymore. And I don't need a onesie that's going to track my breathing and my temperature, all my emotions. I don't have a onesie yet that does all that. The social credit system is going to use something for adults. It's called facial recognition software. So here's an example of how that facial recognition software is going to impact your life and track everything about you, everywhere you go, and everything you do. Let's take a listen.
2018 is going to be a landmark year for face recognition because there's been a huge amount of progress in the underlying technology known as machine learning. And what that allows you to do is pull a very accurate face print out of a photograph that uniquely identifies a person.
Pioneering facial recognition technology hasn't yet hit the mainstream. In 2018,
one more thing.
It will be in our pockets.
Facial recognition is going to go mainstream in 2018, largely because the latest iPhone has face recognition technology built into it.
You look at it, and it recognizes you.
By next year, there'll be millions of those devices out in the world, and we're going to get used to unlocking our phone. Then we're going to start getting used to getting into our banking apps with face recognition, and it's going to start feeling normal.
But using your face to unlock your phone is just the beginning. In the suburbs of Israel's financial center, Tel Aviv, a team of engineers is at the forefront of a technological revolution.
We have invented a simple way of transforming a photo into text.
They're teaching machines to read faces.
The face recognition model can measure the distance between your eyes, the width of your lips, the distance from your lips to your nose, etc. At the end of that process, we are left with a simple text, which is the basis of our recognition.
The software has the power to identify one face from millions in under 1 second.
Our accuracy under a controlled environment is around 99%.
And it's this precision that makes the technology an effective new tool for surveillance.
We can identify people without them knowing that they are being identified. We have clients ranging from medical centers, retail chain stores, churches.
Retail stores are using this technology to generate data on customers, tracking their shopping habits and targeting in-store adverts. Churches are even using facial recognition to monitor attendance. And one school in the UK wants to use it to keep tabs on teachers.
We have one school where teachers took 2 long breaks. Therefore, the management decided to put them on the watch list.
So here's an example of how facial recognition is supposedly going to go mainstream in 2018. It's already being used, in the social credit system in China. If you're jaywalking, they'll put your face on a monitor on a screen to create, a discomfort that you shouldn't do that as a deterrent. But what if in the future, instead of just putting your face on the screen, they take money out of your universal basic income, or they fine you or tax you because you're given 3 warnings, and one night you're having fun with your friends and you forgot and you jaywalked again. All of a sudden, you're being deducted $10. Well, that $10, if you're on universal basic income, you're not living like Donald Trump. You're living on universal basic income. That $10 might make a big difference. What if they increase it every time up to $50 per infraction? Or what if your children you're getting your children's universal basic income because you're the legal guardian, and they keep jaywalking over and over and they keep getting deducted? Now it's impacting your budget. It's impacting what you can do for your children. This is there's a lot of stuff people aren't thinking about. This is why I'm bringing up this information. Well, this is where it really gets interesting, you know, especially with churches doing facial recognition, because religion is going to go through a monstrous transformation. The corporation that manages belief systems, they're at the top. They're doing really, really well. The Vatican, they're doing great. They've got lots and lots of money. They have no taxation. They have their own police. They have their own military. They've got unbelievably extravagant, incredible living quarters at the Vatican or Vatican City. It's just unbelievable. If you visit the Vatican, you're not visiting a motel on the side of the highway in the middle of, the middle of nowhere. You're visiting mega billions, and all the money that comes in is tax-free. They're doing great. So of course they're going to tap into all these technologies and oversee the corporations that they gave the belief systems to of capitalism and communism and socialism and Fabian socialism. They're the ones who are the managers of all the belief systems, not just organized religion. Plus, any money they get in is tax-free, so they can invest in all the technologies they want. Of course they're going to attract people coming into their mosques and churches and synagogues. You know, this is a business. There's nothing to do with actual religion, with actual faith. This is a business. All you have to do is investigate. You'll just see on your own. You don't need me. But, you know, as the social credit system continues to evolve, each corporation that's going to be linking up to the social credit system will be approved by the government. And they'll have their own rules and conditions that the government of your corporation, the US, Canada, Australia, wherever you're going to be, China, they're going to approve that rule system, that credit system under their social credit system. But if you talk to the wrong people and get involved with the wrong people, you're going to really pay the price. You want to know the truth about what's going on? Trust me, the people at the end of, once this system's implemented, you're not going to search anything about the truth ever again that's alternative, that explains how stuff really works, how government really works, how banks really work, how the medical world really works, how the business model is being laid out. You will become a pariah instantly overnight. And if you know somebody who's into this, you're going to turn away as fast as you humanly can, because you don't want to be fined and have a low credit rating. You have to live in government housing. When you used to be middle class, middle upper class, you're going to be stuck on UBI, and you're not going to want to have anything to do with this alternative stuff. You're going to run the other direction. Here's an example of how it could affect your personal life. No matter how educated or how brilliant you are, or how inquisitive or how disciplined you are, here's what can happen to you. Let's take a listen.
But there's one more layer to Sesame Credit, and here's where this goes from being repulsive to downright insidious. Because this is all part of a social network, it also scans your friends. So you will lose points for having friends with low obedience scores. And it tells you this. At any point, anybody can check anyone else's score. And when you check your own score, Sesame Credit provides a handy map of your friends to show you who's dragging your score down. Have you ever had that thing where you play a game with somebody who wasn't doing very well, and you've tried to change their behavior to make them do better? Or maybe after a while you just sort of stopped playing with the people who were holding you back? That's at the heart of how this system works. And it's also what makes this one of the most terrifying tools of authoritarian oppression I've ever read about. Because, like, mass censorship, jail time, assassinations, those are all big, messy implements for keeping a population in line. That messiness and severity foster resentment, eventually rebellion. They're expensive, they're unwieldy. In the end, those tools are impossible to maintain. But social pressure? Ostracization? Those things are free. They happen on their own. And as a government tool, they don't have nearly the same potential for going embarrassingly, disastrously wrong. With a system like this in place, a government doesn't even have to tell neighbor to spy on neighbor, to rat each other out, because that's all built into a seemingly innocuous game system. The government need not step in. Re-education will be handled for them by friends, classmates, and relatives who want to maintain a high score. And if that doesn't work, then potentially dangerous ideas still end up quarantined by the social isolation this game system causes. Express or help to spread too many radical ideas, and people will stop associating with you. And not because some jackbooted thug showed up at the door with threats, but simply because associating with somebody with those ideas will lose them all the privileges they've worked so hard to obtain.
So for those of you who don't know what sesame credit is, it's like the seed, sesame seed, but just take the word seed off. It's sesame credit. And that's part of the Chinese social credit system. You can go look that up and see this information on your own terms and make up your own conclusions. But this is really an introduction to what the social credit system is, how it's going to impact you. And this whole revolution to bring back freedom and supposedly sovereignty to the individual man, woman, and child, I just don't see it. As a matter of fact, I see a subjugation of all of that. You're going to give up your freedom, and you're going to give up your independent thinking, independent thought, independent decision making, and taking your destiny into your own hands. You're going not everyone, but I would say the majority of the world's population is going to give it up for convenience, for benefits, for rewards. And anything that's going to interfere with that will be instantly ostracized. They don't even have to think about it. Again, this is the whole point of the system in artificial intelligence, is to make the decisions for you, to box you into one or two choices. Or with the social credit system, if it's not a popular choice, it's not a government or corporate approved choice, you'll just have to go with it, or you have to take the big hit. And there's going to be a monstrous blacklist that's going to be made. And this blacklist, I haven't even begun to actually discuss what that's all about. I may talk about this blacklist in part 2, but ultimately, this is the best that I can come up with at this current stage to help you understand what this social credit system is. And the second part, I'm going to talk about persuasion versus coercion, and some of the additional technologies that are really going to lock this all in, and some of the outcomes that are going to happen under this new social credit system, whether you live in America, Canada, anywhere on earth, not just China. China is not the boogeyman. Communism is not the boogeyman. For those of you who will listen to this and understand what I'm actually saying, I'm very happy. For those of you who will say, no, it's a certain country, it's a certain group of people, it's a certain organized religion, that's not it. That's designed to keep you from understanding what's really going on at the top. They're going to keep you busy with all this, it's a certain country, it's a certain way of thinking. No, the people who manage the belief systems of the world, the corporate infrastructural belief systems that we all operate under, that's where one of the points of power really lies. That the Vatican is definitely one of the major points behind it. It's not some little tiny country in the Middle East, or it's not this island off in the Pacific, like maybe like New Zealand or Australia or Hawaii. No, it's not going to be any of that. It's going to be people who understand what's really going on, how they're really implementing this information, this control grid. And people who don't ask questions and who don't like making decisions for themselves, they're going to do actually quite well. They're going to do really, really well. People who don't want to think, who don't want to understand anything about their lives, who they are as a person, what their spiritual meaning of their life is in retrospect to the cosmos, it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to live a life of comfort and luxury. But remember, don't make any mistakes, because that's where the real problem is going to be. If you make a mistake, it's recorded forever. Right now, if you make a mistake in your life, a lot of those mistakes can be forgotten and they're not recorded, and you can recover from it. But in the future, you won't be able to recover from the mistakes because they're all recorded with your face, your voice, your eyes, everything. And there'll be cameras in every room. So I'm going to end on that note. Please encourage Jordan in his work. I hope you'll listen in for the next episode, the next part of this 3-part series. Jordan can be reached at jordanmaxwellshow.com, and he also has a research society. Please encourage him in his work, and thank you for listening into the show this evening. I appreciate your time, and I hope this information serves you well. And until next week, I bid you adieu. Good evening and welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show. I'm your guest host, Jeffrey Matt. And tonight's show is a part 2 of a 3-part series on the social credit system. I have another distinct opportunity to fill in for Jordan this evening, and he is coming back to the show next week, so I'm really looking forward to an update from him and seeing what's new with his work, with Gaia, his research society, and maybe any new tidbits that might be on the horizon with any new material that he might have. So I'm really looking forward to that. So please stay tuned. Now, to this second segment on the social credit system, the first part is a quick 1-minute synopsis. As I was basically saying that here's an example of a place that you can have a credit score for your entire life. All the decisions and everything you do is going to be recorded forever, and that credit score is going to carry with you in everything you do. It'll even prevent you from getting certain types of apartments, homes, cars, travel arrangements, or it can give you advantages and benefits that you couldn't possibly get beforehand. So there's going to be an upside too. But I want to explore both sides and look at maybe the sort of the potential pitfalls of this whole thing and how most people would never knowingly, conscientiously sign up for something like this. There is one way that everybody's going to go for it. It's called unemployment. Now, if you have artificial intelligence, robotics, and automation taking up to 800 million jobs out of the job market in the next 12 years, up to 73 million in the United States, even if those numbers are half correct. By the way, I got that from Fortune magazine, just in case you're wondering. Even if those numbers are only 50% accurate, it's still enormous. It's still absolutely monstrous. 30 some odd million jobs are removed through automation. That's enormous. But here the claim is up to 73 million in over the next a little over 10 years. So that's a lot, 73 million. You know, so what is it, 7 million a year, something like that? That's unbelievable. 7.3 million jobs a year, that's a lot. I even myself, I struggle with these numbers. So I was just describing, if automation takes away your job, you can't get a job. That's where the real power is. That's how relationships and families are started. Women will gravitate towards men who are autonomous, that can do something for themselves and provide for their wives and families. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just the reality of nature of the human creature. If you've got a job and you're earning money, well, then you're someone people are going to want to talk to, not just women, just in general. If you have a career and you have an education, you've got something going for you. But if there's no job for you to go to, where's your leveraging point? What gives you a social status? What makes you important? What makes people want to listen to you or be around you? Well, they're going to replace that with a social credit system based on you are going to become the product instead of your career. Your career will become you, but it'll be based on what you do, how you act, what you think, what you say, and where you go and how you spend your money, who you associate with. That will be your credit. And you might be able to get a job and earn more money on top of this supposed free money that's going to fall out of the sky called universal basic income. You know, all these moguls and tech giants and freeform thinkers and think tank gurus and captains of industry and political supergiants are going to come in and say that somehow there's going to be universal basic income with free money with no strings attached. That is unbelievably false. It is so inaccurate. It's almost evil to say something like that. Because not one of those people, almost nobody on the face of the earth, has never, everybody's encountered going home to your parents and you complain about something and your mother or father or your caregiver, if you're unfortunately orphaned, will tell you, this is my home. This is the money I earned to put food on the table, and you will eat what I give you and you will do as I say while you're under my roof. And when you're able to do this on your own by yourself, you can make all those decisions yourself on your own. But until then, I'm the boss. Well, if you're getting universal basic income because you can't get a job, I don't care how educated you are, there's going to be some highly educated people who are just simply not going to be able to get a job because you can't compete with AI and robots. They don't take vacations, they don't get sick, they don't complain, and they'll pay their taxes on time electronically every year with no delay. There'll be no IRS agents coming after the stray robot. It's going to be perfectly streamlined. So your leveraging is going to be your behavior and your thinking and your actions. So one of the things I want to do is I want to bring people who were not able to listen to part one of the social credit system to see what is this this Chinese version of it that came out in 2014. And it's going to go live for everybody in China, all 1.3 billion in the year 2020. And so here's a little bit of a synopsis of what this is all about. Let's take a closer look.
On June 14, 2014, the State Council of China published an ominous-sounding document called Planning Outline for the Construction of a Social Credit System. In the way of Chinese policy documents, it was a lengthy and rather dry affair, but it contained a radical idea. What if there was a national trust score that rated the kind of citizen you were? Imagine a world where many of your daily activities were constantly monitored and evaluated. What you buy at the shops and online, where you are at any given time, who your friends are and how you interact with them, how many hours you spend watching content or playing video games, and what bills and taxes you pay or not. It's not hard to picture because most of that already happens thanks to all those data collecting behemoths like Google, Facebook and Instagram, or health tracking apps such as Fitbit. But now imagine a system where all these behaviours are rated as either positive or negative and distilled into a single number according to rules set by the government. That would create your citizen score and it would tell everyone whether or not you were trustworthy. Plus, your rating would be publicly ranked against that of the entire population and used to determine your eligibility for a mortgage or a job, where your children can go to school, or even just your chances of getting a date. So this sounds like someone in the Chinese government watched Nosedive and thought it would be a great idea. A futuristic vision of Big Brother out of control? No, it's already getting underway in China, where the government is developing the social credit system to rate the trustworthiness of its 1.3 billion citizens. The Chinese government is pitching the system as a desirable way to measure and enhance trust nationwide and to build a culture of sincerity. As the policy states, it will forge a public opinion environment where keeping trust is glorious. It will strengthen sincerity in government affairs, commercial sincerity, social sincerity, and the construction of judicial credibility. Well, to me it sounds gloriously frightening, and it will produce the exact opposite of what is being advertised. Just like Black Mirror, it will produce conformity and insincerity because you won't dare step outside the prescribed opinion set or your social credit will be diminished. Better to play along so you don't get ostracized or, worse still, vanished from existence.
So this gentleman gives us a description of what the Chinese version of this social credit system is all about and provides a little more details than I did in the first part. But there's a couple things I want to address in his explanation. Is he mentions a few words that have very little context. First of all, he says like the Chinese government saw Nosedive, and then later he describes this a Black Mirror scenario. Nosedive and Black Mirror are a television show that describes this kind of system in the future, but they give a westernized, Americanized, Canadian-style westernized version of what it would look like to have a social credit system, where every interaction you have, you can be given a 2, 3, 4, 5-star rating, and who you are as a person is no longer who you are. It's your electronic digital rating and your social credit rating. So the name of the episode is called Nosedive, and it's part of a television series called Black Mirror. And it's available on Netflix. I think you can maybe borrow it from your library, rent it, go to a friend's house who has Netflix and check out the episode Nosedive. It's really, really something. So that part has been addressed. Also, too, looking at the Hollywood version of everything, I understand that it's a show and there needs to be a reward, a profit reward on these shows. But there's someone who I was surprised would talk about it in this particular way. The gentleman's name is Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize winning individual who was recognized for promoting free market economics and believes in, as a professor, he's trying to promote concepts and ideas that supposedly are leading to free thought and free markets and give personal autonomy and liberties as much as possible to the individual. Now, I don't know his entire history, and there may be some contradictions out there, but for this particular show, I'm going to take an excerpt of his take on the world of entertainment and the world of knowledge dissemination through television, radio, and movies, and through the concept of persuasion versus coercion. And if you really want to strip away, what is sociology and what are all these university degrees about how to manipulate people and how to be an authority in your field, basically it's on two concepts. Really take away all the silly nonsense. Either you're going to be persuaded or you're going to be coerced. It's one or the other. Persuasion and or coercion. If you're going to research something for social studies in your high school on the social credit system, or you're a high-ranking individual and you've just forgotten some of the stuff you've learned many years ago and you really want to boil it down, it's persuasion or coercion. And we float between those two back and forth our entire lives. And here's Milton Friedman's take on this concept of how persuasion is a very big factor and how coercion is used just in case it doesn't work. Let's take a closer look.
Right now, the fact that we have a great many different channels of persuasion is a very healthy thing, as long as there's no monopoly. And the real problem arises when we don't have a proper, let me give you I mentioned that one of the worst things we have is a control by FCC of radio and television. Why? Because it reduces the range and variety and alternatives of persuasive material. It gives a special advantage to the advertisers. You ought to have a system of radio or TV in which material can be disseminated the same way it is in print, in which you could do it through fee TV, paying for it, or other ways. But we use force, namely the denial of a license, the fact that a policeman will come and put you in jail if you operate in contravention to the FCC rules to prevent alternative means of dissemination. In my opinion, that's why you have had a wasteland of television, in a phrase that Minnow used some years ago. So I think the fundamental answer to your question is that we must strive to keep all channels open. And if we do that, then it's very tempting for individuals to say, I want to be free of that. Freedom imposes costs as well as benefits. If you have to make up your own mind, that's a terrible thing. Most people would much prefer to have their mind made up for them. But if we're going to maintain a free society, each of us have to undertake the task of making up our own mind.
So that's his take on the FCC and how entertainment really has a direct influence on the psyche of the human being and how it's very limiting. And so education in today's world is not designed to be based on knowledge and independence and autonomy, self-autonomy. It's designed to create a behavior pattern that's going to be compliant with the needs of the corporate, with the needs of the masters. And each country that we all live in, every last country on the face of the earth, to my knowledge, so far, is a corporation. They'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades, over the centuries, to try to make you feel like you're part of a nation, that you're part of some sort of incredible heritage. And you know what? There is a heritage to the human family. But where you live, the piece of land that you're on, the weather patterns are different, the food, the types of food are different, and the resource allocation of where you live might be different, but ultimately you're on Earth. And so the whole artificial boundaries, I'm in this country, I'm in that country, this whole thing about the social credit system in China, and it's the boogeyman, and it's, oh no, it's communism. China is not the boogeyman. China is a corporation, and they are the government is the management team that implements decisions made above them, because there is somebody above China. If they were completely separate from the entire world and they were doing their own thing, do you honestly think GM and Ford and Chrysler and Google and Facebook, they would just do their own thing? They're very resilient, capable people in China, very capable. But they're not operating on their own. They're being handed a system that's going to help them get what they want, and they're using the corporation, they're using a code of conduct called the social credit system to get what they want from the people. If we're going to take you out of the rice fields and put robots to grow all the rice, well, if you're going to live in our cities, you're going to act the way that we should act, and there's going to be some good in there. There's going to be good behavioral reinforcement models in there to try to reduce or to penalize people who are petty thieves, people who abuse other people, take advantage of people sexually. There's going to be some benefits to the social credit system. There's going to be increased advantages and sort of perks. But the downside is really, really important to look at as well. It's not just the upside. The upside is going to be easy. You're going to get extra benefits. But the downside is you may have to give up who you are as an individual. You'll have much less range of choice. Much less. So it's not going to be China the boogeyman or this country and that country is the boogeyman. That's really a very big propaganda scheme that has worked so well. There's like a handful of countries that are absolutely despised around the world. And that is part of a propaganda, and it's part of a belief system that's being pushed so that they can put pressure on everybody to keep everybody distracted on these 6 or 7 countries that are bad. They're the baddies, and in reality, business is moving forward while you're looking at people supposedly that you're not supposed to like, that the media pumps out there. And this is what Milton Friedman, I suspect, is talking about, where if the channels and there's a monopoly, he says as long as there's no monopoly, I suspect it's very close, if not a monopoly. Because you'll see on alternative news like, ABC and NBC and CBS, they're all owned by, 3 or 4 or 5 companies. Well, that's pretty close to a monopoly. And these companies, they're not separate, distant, estranged corporations to each other. They know exactly who they are. They go golfing with each other. They may look like they're at each other's throats in competition at the lower middle management levels, but at the very top, they dine with each other. They take vacations with each other. They're friends. They negotiate all the time. So there is sort of a loose monopoly at the top. This is what Milton Friedman is talking about, and it's a very concerning concept. But if you have a system where the world is a corporation and there's a code of conduct and the laws are in place and you better obey the laws, well, here's a set of laws that maybe some of us may not be familiar with that is going to be directly linked and utilized in a whole new way under the social credit system as unemployment takes off, universal basic income takes effect, and the social credit system is to create guidelines to prevent people from going, behaving too irrationally or being too out of line. They're going to have an extension of the law that's been put in place quite a while ago that's going to be used to keep people in line. Here's what I'm talking about. It's called civil forfeiture. Let's take a closer look.
Did you know that law enforcement officers can take away your private property without charging you with a crime? It's true, and it happens all the time. Every year, federal and state agents seize huge amounts of property and assets from individuals simply by asserting that it's linked to illegal activity. The value of assets seized in this way has ballooned from $407 million in 2001 to $4.3 billion in 2012. So what's going on here? Let's ask CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman. Ricky, good morning.
Good morning.
One example we have here is of a Philadelphia couple whose home was seized after their son made $40 worth of drug sales on the porch. How's that possible?
Well, it's possible because the laws have made it possible. I think we need to distinguish between what this is and what this isn't. When we talk about criminal forfeiture, we can all understand that. The easiest example I can give you is last year we talked about Whitey Bulger's case for quite some time. When Mr. Bulger was convicted, they moved in the criminal courts to forfeit his property that was hidden in the walls, the guns and the money in Santa Monica. That we understand. What happens here in civil forfeiture is that it is a crime that they say may have been attached to the property. The property may have been connected to some crime. And so the government goes after the property, not after the person.
It's led to some really interesting cases in terms of like the United States versus
thousands of shark fins and other interesting items. What I found interesting about this is also you don't necessarily get a lawyer in this case. You are responsible for the legal fees and you're responsible for paying all the court fees.
There's really a disadvantage to the person whose property is seized. First of all, the property gets taken. So then the burden goes on the person to say, hey, wait, I want my property back. I wasn't engaged in any kind of activity, and certainly my property wasn't. So that person has to go to court. That person has to pay for a lawyer. That person has to face a burden of proof that is very little. The burden of proof is preponderance of the evidence. That's like a little feather on the scale.
Much lower than criminal cases.
Much lower than beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal cases. And so what we have here is this juxtaposition. Let me give you good work done by seizure and bad work done by seizure.
So there we go. There's a concept and a legal infrastructure that's in place called civil forfeiture. I want to put this into context because realistically, overwhelmingly, civil forfeiture is used to take away proceeds and materials from criminal activity. But, you know, the police stations all over America, you know, possibly there's something similar in Canada or in other countries around the world, but this particular example is for the U.S. and how the social credit system will come into play is that if these laws are not adapted or modified and you are unable to get a job because automations come into place, and you have maybe some savings or you have some money and it's all going to be cryptocurrency in the future, and they have e-readers that are going to have on, the police are going to have on them, or drones will be scanning, and they'll be telling people, you know, reading everybody's e-wallet, and they'll say, hey, this person's got $40,000, you know, where's this $40,000 come from? The cops could decide to investigate, and they don't have to charge you, and they can take the money. Now, understandably, that's not the goal of the police system. Police are very important. I don't want to go outside and see violence all over the place. I don't want to go to the grocery store, go to my friends' homes, visit family, travel, and have to be worried about violence in the streets. Police are extremely, extremely important. They serve a very, very important purpose in today's society. It's one of the reasons why so many people want to come to America or Canada or other westernized countries, because there's stability. So for me to poo-poo the entire police infrastructure is the biggest mistake in the world. What I'm trying to point out is that there have been abuses that have been accumulating for 2 decades, over 2 decades. We're going on 3 now, folks, of people saying, look, our police force, we're running low on materials, we don't have the same police gear that we could have, and maybe some particular police outfits or police officers or who may have fallen into the land of temptation because the law it is legal. They can go ahead and say, I think that this money might be linked to some sort of illicit activity, and so I'm going to take it, and then the person who has it confiscated has to spend all kinds of money, hundreds of dollars an hour for a lawyer to fight to get their money back, wait for up to a year to get a court date, and then finally get their money back. And in some cases, they don't actually get it back. They'll only get like 9/10 of it back or 80% of it back because they inconvenience the police system. But in reality, they're allowed to take your property with you don't get arrested, you don't get convicted, you don't go to court, but they can take it all. And if the American population or other countries have similar laws like this, and you just sit down and relax and watch the cheerleaders at the Super Bowl, and you keep letting this evolve and grow, it went from a few million to 4.3 billion in 2012. Do you think it's going to go down or it's going to go up? Of course it's going to go up. We live in a world of a military-industrial complex, corporate-industrial complex. They need your money. That's the whole point. You are the product. You are the corporate product. And that social credit system will keep you in line. So if you say something out of line, if you look incorrectly at the officer, and that officer had a really difficult day because they had to deal with some very challenging, dangerous work, and you mouth off or you ask the wrong question, you have the wrong tone of voice, I can assure you, these people, they're under a lot of pressure. And if they find out that they're not going to be able to have the basic gear anymore because they don't have the financing, their town can't raise the taxes, and the state doesn't have enough allocations, and the federal government only goes, subsidized monies only go so far. Do you not think that civil forfeiture is not another way of getting the goodies and to pay for salaries for police officers? You don't think that's going to be exploited? It's legal for the police to do this. It's not illegal. It's not like they're doing something wrong. They can just say, look, I don't know where you have this $1,500 from. Well, I'm going to go pick up my friend's furniture. He bought it for $4,000, but he says if I bring $1,800 right now, I can get it. But if your cousin was arrested for smoking some illicit, like a marijuana or something like that, or a long time ago you were speeding, they can just say, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't believe what you're saying. This money, I'm not sure it's really for furniture. You know what? I'm going to take it, and I don't want you getting involved with illicit activity. I'll just take it, and I'm the authority here. You're not. So a social credit system, are you going to contest that? Are you going to spend hundreds of dollars of your universal basic income to fight to get your money back? It's going to cost you just as much, if not more, to get the money back, unless it's, many tens of thousands of dollars. And even then, there's all that trauma of having to go through the legal system. So there's going to be big, big problems with this. So much so that all those people saying that you can't, we're not in a debtor's society. There is no such thing as debt slaves, or you're imprisoned by your debt. Well, here's a gentleman who found out the hard way that in the future with the social credit system, this kind of scenario could really balloon out of control. Right now, it's extremely, extremely rare. But I want you to see an example of how it starts small and it gets big. Let's take a closer look.
We have a breaking story just posted to the RTR newsfeed regarding, get this, a SWAT team called in by the Department of Education to raid a home and collect a debt.
This is what they did to my door.
At 6 this morning, a SWAT team surprised Kenneth Wright at his front door.
In my underwear. Before I get to the door, I hear him say, hit it.
Wright later complained to Stockton's mayor and police, but the city pointed to the U.S. Department of Education.
They say you owe a student loan and you gotta pay it. I just had my door kicked in because of this.
And he has this warning to former students that the federal government's coming to collect in a big way.
People that have student loans out there or people that owe money, please pay your bills. Take care of your credit. If you don't believe me, this could be you one morning, 6 o'clock in the morning.
With the help of the Stockton Police Department, News 10 was able to contact one of the federal agents who was at the search this morning, who gave us a Washington, D.C. number for the Office of the Inspector General, who confirmed it was the Department of Education who conducted the search, but they can't discuss anything in the case until it's closed, not even if it's policy to break in and handcuff people who default on student loans.
Wow, so here's an example. This is extremely rare. It's not really supposed to be that way, but it's going in this direction. Civil forfeiture is 100% legal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it is. And because people love sports and they enjoy entertainment and they love watching movies all the time, they're not interested in all this stuff until it comes to your front door. But since it hasn't come to 99% of people's front door, nobody's worrying about it, even though it's up to $4.3 billion in seizures up to 2012. And I'm sure a large portion of it has nothing to do with illicit activity. It's just a suspicion. No charges, no conviction, no criminal record, but your car's gone, your house is gone. It's just really incredible. Somebody's house was taken over a $40 deal that some child did on their front porch, and they lose their home. With a social credit system, this is the kind of thing that's going to be coming down the pipe. It's not going to be this rare, really outlandish example that I'm going to be pointing out. It's going to become a commonplace thing. And if you say anything out of line to the social credit police, they can seize anything that you have on you. And then you'll be docked points. And if you contest it, you'll lose even more points, and you'll be considered as a revolutionary or a rabble rouser or whatever. and you're not going to contest anything, so you'll just accept the loss and they'll just keep taking. Civil forfeiture is not illegal, folks. It's designed to get the bad guys illegal proceeds off the street, but they're still using it for regular folk. And if the police are willing to use it for regular folk, that means it's just going to grow and grow and grow. And I'm not accusing individual officers or police outfits of corruption. This is not corruption. This is legal. It is legal for them to have a suspicion that you might be doing something wrong, or you are around somebody who's doing something wrong, and to take whatever you have on you. It's legal. There's nothing illegal or corrupt about taking what you have. It's part of the way of the American way in the U.S. corporation. So this will evolve and grow. But at the top, the people who decide how they're going to get all these kinds of materials and how they're going to inspect and find out who's doing what, when, and where, well, they have a special place where they get all these kinds of equipment. And here's a little synopsis of how they do it, sort of at the middle upper echelon of the police departments and the intelligence communities around the world. They come to these symposiums to find out how they can sort of monitor the internal trackings of the citizenry of your own corporate country.
When countries go shopping for surveillance tech, this is where they come. Milipol in Paris, one of the largest state security expos in the world. There are hundreds of companies here who stand to make a lot of money from the deals they sign, and we've come along to see what's on offer. It's a welcoming atmosphere here. There are people drinking champagne, taking selfies, playing with guns, and there's a huge range of equipment on offer, from assault rifles to drones to armored vehicles to hazmat suits, signal jammers, and of course some very powerful surveillance tech.
What we enable is to actually intercept phone calls, gather intelligence in order to prevent hopeful terror attacks.
So you have this rucksack in this box, and you can put it down in a location, in a crowd at a protest, for instance, something like that, and it can intercept 30 phone calls simultaneously within that radius.
This small box. So if you're in a crowded city, such as Paris, for example, you can be getting thousands of calls an hour.
I guess, when you're intercepting that many calls, you must be intercepting lots of people you don't want to, lots of innocent people just going about using their phones. So how do you make sure that you don't get the wrong people on the call?
Well, the thing is, what we would recommend doing is mass interception. Of course, we don't want to invade anybody's privacy. But at the end of the day, the problem is that you can never know what cell phone the criminals will be using.
Another stand was selling a piece of kit that could rip a huge amount of data off phones that had their Wi-Fi switched on. So it's like a Facebook profile that you put in front of me. It's like photos, it's passwords, details about his phone, his device, his carrier, his country, his address, his web history. Is there a concern that innocent people may be caught up in that process?
We sell a car. How you drive it, it's your responsibility.
So this is just an example of how the police and militarized internal security technologies out there that are going to police the system. I understand there's people out there who want to bring harm to the general public, and we need those people out there doing this work. At the same time, though, because it's a corporation and it has employees and it has a profit and it has an objective to make money, this is the biggest divide in today's world that people are not understanding. If I have to really synthesize everything and put it in just a few sentences, your entire life in today's world is going to be based on persuasion and coercion. If you want to live a simple, above-board life, that does not mean you're going to have freedom of choice. Your legal lifestyle will be completely managed with a code of conduct. That's what corporations have. They are going to put a code of conduct on you. Since you have no leveraging power, you can't work, you can't demand anything, you can't lobby for anything, and if you want to do all this stuff, you're going to have a lot of problems. Do you honestly think all these technologies and this guy who got his door kicked in because he defaulted on a student loan, that's not going to be a unique case. That's going to explode. And at the same time, all those people out there, I see it on the alternative news and on CNN and all these other networks out there that keep putting garbage out there with protest this and protest that, LGBTQ, Antifa, Occupy, all of it is going to almost all go away. Do you want to go out and protest when a drone can do a facial recognition and detect who you are and lower your credit score and put you on a penalty blacklist? Are you going to go out and protest? No way. I don't care how dumb you are, how young, ignorant, foolish, if you're drunk and you didn't think it through and say, I'm going to go protest anyway, I'm going to fight the government, fight the power, all that silly nonsense. Well, with this social credit system, you will be on a train going into the darkest depths of the black hole of your life if you go out and protest. First of all, protesting is a complete waste of time, and it authorizes overtime and new draconian laws to make protesting even more difficult and locks down the streets even more. It has got to be one of the most inefficient ways to get a point across, and it hurts society, local businesses. They get shut down. Sometimes they're vandalized. It's just a monstrous waste of time. But I guess if you want some proof of what I'm talking about, how it's going to be the absolute anti-revolutionary technology, the social credit system, let's take a closer look at some of the ways that they're going to be able to nip this all in the bud, all the silly nonsense of protesting and fighting and all this stuff. Well, let's look at what this layered voice analysis system's all about.
At first glance, this looks like a basic laptop computer with a microphone off to the side. But don't underestimate this little box. It has the potential to be so much more.
I can take 2 words and find a deceptive statement.
This is being touted as the next generation of lie detector, layered voice analysis, or LVA. It is software installed on a laptop that analyzes voices.
I would put it in a radio car and make it available to every police officer.
Commander Sid Hale is the tech guru for the LA County Sheriff's Department, now testing LVA for use within the county.
This is actually quite a bit of an improvement over anything else that we've had in the past.
In simple terms, how does this work? This uses the frequency of the human voice.
Lynn Robbins heads up the U.S. company Voice Analysis Technologies, and she agreed to demonstrate how LVA works. First, with volunteers.
Tell me about your move to Los Angeles.
I was a tourist, so I didn't have much stuff.
Regardless of language, the technology allows interrogators to find the areas where there's an emotional connection.
There were a lot of what shows as false statement with deep information.
I love going to New Orleans.
Our volunteer Patrick deliberately lies about the last time he was in New Orleans.
When was the last time you were there?
6 months ago.
Robbins immediately knows something is not right, so she follows up.
Okay, was all of the music and everything back in place when you were there?
It was.
Unlike a polygraph test, this does not require someone to be hooked up to a machine. It only needs a voice, and that voice can come in person or from a recording.
I had a romantic relationship that was inappropriate and unfair to a lot of people.
This is an interview with Scott Peterson before the bodies of his wife Lacey and his unborn son washed up in the Bay Area, and long before he was convicted and sentenced to death.
It had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance.
He doesn't believe that himself. He knows that he did, and it's a probable false.
How sure are you that he lied in this interview?
Very sure.
You don't necessarily need someone's consent to use it?
No.
Commander Hale says he believes LVA could be up and running in Los Angeles before the end of summer.
The thing that we gain from this is the ability of using in real time with far less training than we've had in the polygraph, far more portable, and in actual field conditions as opposed to a laboratory setting where you're actually wired up to a machine.
Commander Hale believes this could allow investigators to focus on a smaller number of suspects right away, saving time and money.
Do you see this as being almost a standard litmus test like the drug tests are now for employment down the road?
It's being used for pre-employment screen, but we always let the person know that they're being interviewed and that it's going to be analyzed. It's the same with the insurance companies. When the insurance companies use it, they let the person know that their voice is being analyzed or being recorded for further analysis. This is a very serious tool that should be used by law enforcement. It should be used in military applications, intelligence communities, fraud, places where that intent to deceive is going to do harm.
Wow. So we have a voice analysis software that can detect if you have stress in your voice and detect if you're being deceptive in any way. Okay, so it's only supposed to be used in the military. But you know what? So are the iPhones. Cellular technology started in the military. Now children have iPhones. What makes you think that this software won't end up in the principal's office in every school all over America, in hospital admittance centers, in psychiatric hospitals, in insurance offices, banks, restaurants? It's going to be everywhere eventually. But see, with the development of automation and artificial intelligence and AI, it's not just going to be a computer screen. They're also going to have a roboticized version of it. Here's another example of what I'm talking about that's going to explain even in more detail where this is all going, how the social credit system is going to be using these technologies everywhere all the time. Let's take a closer look.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Yes, we're the whole social robot effort and all, the affective computing and social robotics merging there, is very much focused on, what would it take to build something like that? A creature that could sense and respond to your feelings that you choose to display. There's also ways to sense things maybe that you don't choose to display, and that gets into some other territory. But maybe reading the regular social cues that we all give off and responding to those the way you would expect a person to. And yes, that can facilitate friendship and companionship.
Does it turn us all into lie detectors wandering around potentially, or that cops would have these kinds of sensors, or that governments would basically use this information to say?
I was at this meeting in Washington where they, what do they call it, the assessment research summit, credibility assessment research. Is no longer calling it lie detection, it's credibility assessment research. Ours.
And this was in Washington where they have credibility assessment.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Yeah, what a bunch of chuckleheads.
There are an enormous number of ways that you can imagine governments are interested in reading what's going on, especially with the rise of terrorism. Are we more stressed than we should be when we're standing in line at the airport? The classic polygraph lie detector tests measure a lot of the same signals that change with emotion because, in fact, it's the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response that they're usually looking at to be most reliable changing in lie detection. So, in fact, the signals in here are signals that are used in lie detection.
Yeah, so that's another example of how this is all going to being put into play with social robots and the credibility assessment center. This kind of future forward thinking is going to dictate every aspect of our lives. It's coming, it's on its way, it's already partially in place. China has their own version of it. It's happening, folks. It's happening. Well, if you're not convinced yet, I have another technology that you might be interested in. This will help guide your entire life, and you'll have unbelievable comfort, and you'll never have to worry ever again, and it's just going to be wonderful. Let's take a closer look.
An alert tonight about a new way to catch criminals or simply tell if a loved one is being truthful.
Scary stuff here, as Gabby Hart shows us. One company believes it can tell if somebody is lying just by looking them in the eye.
A new form of lie detection claims it can see the truth.
When a human being is being deceptive, that there are these microdilations of the pupils. It's the extra mental energy that it takes to be deceptive.
iDetect has been in the works since 2003. Only taking 30 minutes to complete, this new testing technology could be faster and more efficient than the old school polygraph. Its creators argue that iDetect may have the edge because it isn't influenced by any human bias.
So by removing the human element, we believe we can make the assessment of credibility far more forensic in nature.
Ron Slay is a security consultant who administers polygraph exams. He says in in his 40 years of experience, he's seen all forms of deception, and he thinks it takes more than a computer system and answering a few questions to detect a lie.
You can't automate the human mind.
We wanted to put both methods to the test, so I sat down to see which machine would best read my lie.
I'm in the hot seat.
First, we put the standard polygraph to the test. Slay asked me 2 questions that were simple enough to answer honestly.
Now, I want everybody to watch the blue line. Is today Tuesday?
Yes.
But before he even finished asking me the 3rd question...
At work, did you ever look at a boss with sincere eyes when you knew the reaction is already over? It took off and it's barely coming back again.
Then we tested eye detect. Harris had me write down a number between 2 and 8 and then hide it. I chose the number 7. The examiner told me to lie about my number to the machine, but to tell the truth on all the other questions, as the eye detect system calibrated my eyes and then monitored my pupil dilation.
I did not choose the number 7. 8 was not the number that I picked.
Look at the spike on the 7.
Safe to say that I got caught lying or preparing to lie on both tests. But Slay says it can sometimes be harder to catch the people you want to catch because they have their own truths.
They're not really answering your questions at all. They're answering what they perceive to be your questions.
Slay and Harris agree that both eye detect and polygraphs can get it wrong sometimes.
There will be some false positives and false negatives with eye detect as it exists today.
But Harris says the beauty of computer algorithms is that they get smarter over time.
Scary, huh? iTech says it hopes that this technology will be a tool to help police actually more than a commercial product. Apple has purchased similar technology, but still no word on exactly how the computer giant plans to use that.
Wow, so here we go. Apple has a similar type of technology that they purchased, but I don't seem to be hearing about that in the news too much. Wow, how interesting. So they're going to be able to listen to your voice and figure out if there's something wrong or there's something that makes you nervous. And they're going to be able to look at your eyes, and they're going to be able to tell if there's something wrong, if you're nervous about something. And this is going to keep you in line. It's called the social credit system. And it's coming. And you're going to deal with it, and you're going to have to deal with it. It's just the bottom line. I know all kinds of people that are going to be absolutely elated to have a camera looking at their eyes and listening to their voice, analyzing deception for the rest of their entire lives. It's just going to be so delightful. Well, aside from all that, there is one other thing that I was thinking about that I'd like to discuss with you this evening. And it really... we've talked about the eyes, we've talked about the voice, but and I've already mentioned this in part 1, but facial recognition really is the future. I mean, the new iPhone has facial recognition, and Apple owns a technology that can detect deception or stress levels in your eyes with your eye pupil dilation. So that would combine with facial recognition. Individual thought, individual freedom of thought. Being able to make your own decisions on your own terms, it looks like it's on its way out. It looks like it's going to be out of style, out of fashion pretty soon. It's going to take a while. There's a lot of people who, because they don't really understand what's going on, they're going to be doing wonderful. But the thing is that you just got to make sure you never make a mistake, and that's really the key here. If you want to have the most incredible life possible, just don't make a mistake. Don't ask a question. Don't think of a question, because your eye dilation and your voice stress and your face might reveal something, that there might be something wrong, and they'll send an agent to your house saying, is everything okay? Do you need help? Psychology and psychiatry services will come in and swoop in to save the day. And if you're not compliant, and you're not obedient, and you're not conforming, well, your universal basic income, you might be docked 10%, or you might have a freeze on your certain benefits, or until you go and get anger management courses, or re-education centers, or online courses, until you finally get it. And you have to pass these tests, and it's not going to be tests where you just answer A through D in a multiple choice. They're going to be looking at your eyes. They're going to be listening to your voice, and if you don't believe what you're saying, they're going to know it. It's a bright, bright future, folks. But let's take a closer look. Since we've already talked about the voice and we already heard about the eye technology, let's just take one last look at facial recognition, how it's all going to tie it all together.
That allows computers to mimic the human brain's ability to learn. That means they can now compensate for problems like low light and bad angles. They can also adjust for age, making it possible to identify adults from their childhood pictures. So how does it work? Using complex algorithms, facial recognition systems start out by identifying all of the faces in a given image. For each face, the algorithm measures out key data points, like the distance between the eyes or the color of the skin. They then use those measurements to create a template that can be compared against other templates in a facial database. The more data they have, the better these systems do. Hundreds of millions of social media users here upload photos every day under terms of service that basically allow tech companies to do what they want with the images. Add a vast network of surveillance cameras, and China has lots of data to feed its algorithms. There are 170 million surveillance cameras installed in China, including more than a dozen on this stretch of road behind Beijing's Forbidden City. Analysts say China plans to install 450 million new surveillance cameras by the year 2020. The massive market represented by those cameras has attracted interest from established companies and startups alike.
So 450 new camera detection sites around China. That is a very large country. But so is America and so is Canada. You know, if we installed 20 or 30 million new cameras in Canada, what does that mean for people in North America? What does that mean for the future of thinking on your own? You know, as I mentioned about the Sesame credit system, you can look that up on the internet, Sesame credit system. If you have a friend who's a free thinker, who's like, I don't agree with this, or I don't know if this is the right thing to do, I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to go to my local mayor's office. There's an AI computer there. There's cameras, and it'll tell in your voice, sir, we can detect that you're agitated, or you're concerned, or you're frustrated. And then more people will come in, or more robots will come in. And basically, it's going to be very, very easy to be discouraged, to not ask questions, and to not complain, because it's overwhelming. Artificial intelligence is not one robot. It is a gang. It is a gang of people. You know, when it comes to dealing with the future of corporatism, they are your parent. They are your boss. And it's going to revolutionize the social infrastructure of the human family. And a lot of us are going to be stuck in the future. It's also sort of like a weeding out program. They're going to weed out all the people they don't want. You know, companies don't keep on foot draggers and people who aren't bringing something to the table, right? It's called trimming the fat. It's called downsizing. It's called letting people go. You're fired. But in this case, if you're fired as a citizen with a bad credit score and you want to get back up, nobody's going to want to help you, because your poor score could negatively bring down someone's high score. So helping somebody, unless it's a state-approved help program, you cannot go to other friends and family, people you've known since your childhood, and say, look, I need a place to stay for the next few weeks and I'm stuck, or I'm sick and I need a little extra help with the food and everything. They're going to see that their high score is going to be dinged, and they'll get special warnings. If you get a phone call from someone with a low credit score, they'll get a special ring on their phone, on their chat, on their email. They'll get notifications. Someone with a really bad score is trying to reach you, and you're going to just say, look, I don't have time for this. I got to take care of my children, my babies, and I've got things to do with my life. It's already hard enough. I don't have time to help people with low scores and have my score go down trying to help someone. The only people who are going to be able to help people is going to be government-approved programs and government robots and the corporate-approved person. This is not a Chinese issue. This is a global issue. This is a man and woman issue, because we're going to become a lower species very soon. You know, I'm going to explain later on the significance of all this, but this will be the end of part 2. Part 3, I'm going to go into much more detail, but I want to thank everyone for your time. If you want to reach me, it's at intellect.website@gmail.com, intellect.website jordan.website@gmail.com. And please encourage Jordan and look at joining his research society. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Jeffrey Matt, and it's Wednesday, March 28th, 2018, and I'm reaching out to you from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I'm doing part 3 on the social credit system. Part 1 and part 2 are very important to listen to beforehand. And if you listen to this one first, then I invite you afterwards to go listen to part 1 and part 2 so you understand where I'm coming from, because I'm not going to be explaining certain things the same way in this segment. I'm under the assumption that you listen to the first 2 segments. To access those first 2 segments, you can either go through my website, jeffreymatte.com, JEFFREYMATTE.com, and click on the big red button on the home page that says click here for the latest research on the social credit system. And also for this segment, you can scroll down on my main page and look for the social credit system section and look at the pictures that I have put together for you to help confirm and corroborate what I'm saying in this segment. It's very, very important that you refer to these pictures so you see what I'm talking about, versus just hearing what I'm saying and wondering how in the world did I come up with all this? Did I fabricate this, or is there something to what I'm saying? Is there some sort of reference point you can go to and double check what I'm saying? Also, the first and second segment that I did so as a guest host on the Jordan Maxwell Show on American Freedom Radio. So you can go into the 2018 archives and look for the month of February and access the first and second part there as well. Now, the social credit system. I'm going to do maybe a 1-minute recap of what it is, and so if you're new to this, you'll have an understanding. It's an existing program with the government of China where all the citizens in China, right now it's voluntary. It started in 2014, and in 2020 it'll become mandatory for everybody, where you have an online presence. You own a cell phone. There's facial recognition. There's social media, just like we have here, but everything that you say and do will be calculated into your score. It's not going to be the same as a credit score here in North America or in Europe based on your payment history, and if you want to be a good guy or a bad guy, a good girl or a bad girl, if you have a good payment history, you have an excellent score. It's going to be based on all your behaviors, not your payment history. So if you have a friend who is rebellious or a criminal, you can have problems because of their behavior, even though you have nothing to do with them. You're not involved with their activities. You're not involved with their opinions that may be for or against their own government, and that can actually severely impact you. And if you're really misbehave, you can end up on a blacklist where you can't travel. Your picture will be taken every day when you cross the street, and if you jaywalk, it'll be posted on big billboards, and it will be recorded for the rest of your life that you jaywalked 4 times in 2018, and so on and so forth. And so you'll have a permanent record of everything you do for the rest of your life. And you can receive fines, you can be blacklisted, you can have reduced access to luxuries in life like certain foods, certain hotels, travel accommodations, not just blacklisting you from being able to travel internationally or not be able to take a plane or first class ticket. It'll become you won't be able to do anything if you're really not careful. And so, but I'm not really going to focus too much on that. I'm going to focus on where did this program come from and how is it coming together and where does it really come from and who is involved in the process. Now, before I get into that, I want to sort of make something very clear before I begin. My mindset and my current understanding is that I'm very, very attracted to 2 words, observer and neutrality. Just like the country Switzerland is known internationally as a neutral country, and just like the Vatican has an observer status in the United Nations, I like those 2. I like the combination of those 2. I like to be a neutral observer. What does that mean for me, a neutral observer? It just means that I'm observing what I see in the news, what I've read from my research, from the people I've been able to connect with, my inner circle of contacts and acquaintances, and friends, and so I'm able to collate certain things together. Just like if you're doing a book report on a book, you don't get happy or sad, you just do the book report. And so all I'm doing is I'm observing the business model of the world. I'm not interested in disrespecting anybody in the business world, in the government, in the religious orders. I'm not interested in denigrating their position or who they are as a person because, to be quite honest, I don't know any of the world leaders personally. And because I don't know them personally, I always do what I was taught by my parents and what I learned throughout my life. Show respect. Because you don't know who they are and you don't know what they know. They may be the best people on the earth, they may not be. But until I have direct interaction with these people, I want to extend courtesy and respect to them. Even if it's, in some cases, it may or may not be reflected towards me, it doesn't matter. I was brought up to try to observe and to be neutral as much as possible. Stay away from fights, stay away from dissent. And so this is the goal I'm going to be doing in this sort of neutral observation of the business plan of today's world. Some of the players are going to be involved are world business leaders, the technocracy using technological behemoths such as Facebook and Google and so on and so forth, Alibaba and Tencent. There's all kinds of companies out there that are participating for their business market share to acquire a foothold, a market foothold, to be in a prime position. So when the social credit system becomes completely consolidated around the world, all the major corporations are in place for it. All the patents have been submitted. All the technologies have been put into place. You know, Gmail and Facebook and Skype, they're all free for a reason. They want an adoption rate as high as possible. They want their databases to be as abundant as possible. And it's part of a business model. Then they can sell features and capabilities that you couldn't do. You can do conference calls if you buy it. You can call phones from your Skype. You have to pay for the extra bells and whistles. But now they have your subscription and they have your participation and now you volunteered for it. Everybody who's on Facebook or Twitter and all that, they volunteered all their personal data, their name, their address, their date of birth, if they enjoy women, men, their political stance, where they spend all their time, who they are interested in romantically. They give everything up for free so that other people can read it for free. So it's a very interesting business model because it requires you to donate as much as you possibly can for almost nothing in return. What you basically get in return is a platform to communicate with a lot of other people instantaneously at no additional cost to you. That's really the main return. But the corporations, they get everything about your life. They can resell it. And they can also sell you options and features on their platform so that you can enhance your experience with them. You can maybe start a company with it. And you can create an online presence, an online reputation, an online brand. Either your name or your corporation or both. And so in China, there's been an extreme development in the last 30 years. If you go look up the development of Shanghai from 30 years ago to today, it's night and day. It's unbelievable how quickly that city, that mega city, blossomed in the last 30 years. And that means there's construction 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, without any kind of, there's no stopping. Nothing stops. It's just a non-stop progression. And so it's been the same concept with the technologies. It's overwhelming. It's in your face. It's everywhere. Now everybody's starting to get interested in it because the companies are using it to streamline their business model. They're using it to capture data and gain more market share. They want to know more about their customers since you're donating a significant portion of your life to them. And you're posting all your updates for free. You're not getting paid to go on Facebook to update who you slept with, what restaurant you went to, what your relationship status is, who you voted for, if you're interested in trying a new sexual experience with the opposite sex or the same sex. Nobody's sending you a check to do that. So what happens is that the companies get unbelievable data for free. And the network itself, it is costly up front, but once it's paid for, to maintain it is peanuts. To upgrade it costs a little bit to have the people to upgrade the whole thing. But eventually with automation, artificial intelligence, which are now becoming more and more prevalent, there's not going to be a requirement to hire 50,000 people or 30,000 people at Amazon here. And so robotics and automation and artificial intelligence will eventually bleed away all the jobs. So what's going to be left over? You don't have a career, or more and more people will not have a career. They won't have the capability to get a new job. Universal basic income comes into play. With universal basic income, you now have no leveraging power as an individual human being. It's like being a child in a house, and the house is not yours, right? Because when you buy a home, let's say you have enough money to buy a home or buy a condo, even if you paid off the note, you still do not own it. You still have to pay city taxes or ordinance school taxes, home buyer taxes. You never really ever own anything outright. And so what happens is that because you don't own anything outright, you don't really have any leveraging. That's why you always have to go to court to negotiate. Even if you own the house or you own a condo or you own a car, if something happens, you can't just say, look, you owe me, and you can't deal with it directly yourself. You have to use a system because you don't own anything. Just like when you get a car, you register the car. The plate that you put on that car comes from a province or comes from a state. It doesn't say the owner is Bob Smith. It says the owner is Quebec or Massachusetts or California or Texas or British Columbia. It says the name of the actual owner of the car is on the plate. So you don't own a car, you do not own a home, and you no longer have the leveraging power of a career or a job. So now what is left? Your behavior, your conduct, your person is now the new gold. If you donate your DNA, if you donate your hair, your spit, your semen, your stool, your blood, your urine, you donate your body, your organs to science, you donate your time to volunteer, that's where your value is. And that's going to create a social credit system score on you. I'm helping science move forward to fight against cancer. I go in and I do blood draws for the Cancer Society, and so that increases my credit score a little bit. I decided to join a bowling league. It doesn't necessarily raise your score, but it's a social interaction. You get an extra 2 points. You want to feel like you're part of a group and you have meaning, you have value. There's going to be an explosion in North America and possibly Europe as well. I would even dare say South America and Russia as well, with secret societies. So there's going to be an overwhelming surge of people joining secret societies in the next 100 years. Why? Because you have a social status attached to you. You know, I'm not talking about Freemasons as the demon or the devil or Lucifer. I'm not interested in any of that. Look at the Freemasons as an organization, as a business, and these businessmen are very capable people. They're not silly. They know what they're doing. Other secret societies, they have an entire corporate infrastructure, okay, and they know what they're doing, and you move up into their society. And if you are someone who's compliant and you understand, you're willing to learn, you're going to do quite well. Well, and under a new social credit system, secret societies are going to be very, very attractive to a lot of people, because it's going to enhance your social status. Whether you like what I'm saying or not, whether you agree with it or not, it's going to happen. The Freemasons and the Knights of Malta and all the other groups out there are going to explode with people over the next 20 years. It's going to grow. Right now, it's probably not happening, but it's going to become a huge, huge trend in the future. If you are someone who is of faith, you'll spend a lot more time with your local church, synagogue, or mosque. You'll join whatever groups or organizations that are attached there. You'll spend a lot more time in these groups, and your conduct and your contributions will be noted accordingly, because artificial intelligence and the technocratic infrastructure will record everything you do. It will know when you leave the home, what you took out of your fridge to eat that morning. The insurance companies will be updated if you're eating healthy or not, if you are courteous or not. The technology companies will be monitoring all your accounts. I mean, even Microsoft was saying that if you have a Skype or Outlook or any kind of Microsoft product, and by May 1st this year, 2018, they're going to be looking for offensive language. They're going to be looking for people who are abusive in any way, obviously criminal activity. They're going to scour through everybody's account, and they're going to look for any kind of infraction, and you will be penalized. Well, that's an introduction to the social credit system in North America. That's an introduction. And so what will happen is eventually it'll make it down to your fridge, where when you open the door to your fridge, it's going to say, hey, that's the 8th time you open your fridge door. Are you getting another cookie or another yogurt? Are you taking your 6th soda pop out? And if you want a lower insurance rate, you'll have to negotiate, and you're really going to have to do your homework to do well in the social credit system. You're going to have to really, really do your homework. But if you want to have a better idea of where it comes from, my best assessment so far is it actually stems and comes and originates from a doctrinal position from the Vatican itself. Pope Francis, he is the Holy Father of the Catholic Church, and this gentleman has access. Not only is he an educated, capable man, but he has access to a multi-thousand-year-old database of human knowledge, law, science, agriculture, all the statistics on humans, on reproduction, on basically everything that humanity has ever recorded. The Vatican pretty much has a copy of almost everything that's happened, and it's been harnessed and accumulated and protected in the Vatican Library. But the thing is, though, is that 99.99999% of the whole human family does not have access to this knowledge. And so the Vatican is creating new business models and new business programs that they want to see put into place under the technological push forward. And they're using corporate countries. As I've mentioned, and Jordan has taught me, is that the U.S. is not a country, it's a corporation. It's a corporate democracy. So if that's the case, then most of the Western world is under the same banner, if not all of it, in one form or another. And so to be able to manage 8 billion people, this is a very difficult concept for most people to perceive, because most people, it hurts. There's no physical pain, but it's very, very difficult. I'd even say this as an example to help you better understand the social credit system, how it's coming together and where it's going. Imagine that you are for some reason are approached by the powers that be, and they're going to say, we want you to come help us manage these 8 billion people. It's going to be 9 here inside of a decade, and it's going to be 11 within a couple decades. We want you to help us manage those 8 billion people and make things work as best as possible. How would you respond to that? Would you say, of course, I got it all. I'll be able to do it all from my iPad? Or I can do it from my Samsung phone? Will you be able to do it with just 6 pens at your desk and a couple erasers and a pad of paper? Will your degree, your PhD in biology, be able to help you manage 8 billion lives in a way that you would consider decent and appropriate? And it will not destabilize and collapse. With any common sense, almost everybody, including myself, I would not be able to properly, to be honest with myself, I would not be able to say, yes, I know how to manage 8 billion lives. If you say, yes, I know exactly what to do, thank God that you're not going to go up and do that. I would not want to be under you under any circumstances. If I met you and you explained to me how you did it, then it might change my mind, but it's very unlikely. Because most people with any intellect will realize it's an astronomical feat. You need to understand every possible dynamic of the human psyche, the history of mankind, the history of law, the history of money, the history of science, the history of technology, the history of the cosmos, the history of the oceans, all the life on Earth, ecologies and ecosystems. You got to know it all. No wonder the Vatican has a team of cardinals and bishops and priests and Jesuit priests out there, Opus Dei and all, working day and night to try to make things work. Whether it's fair or just or right in your mind is irrelevant. Most people do not have what it takes to manage 8 billion people. And then to have a good business relationship with other people that on your global humanity management team to actually be able to do it. That's why they broke up the corporation into countries around the world. That's why the royal business partners of royalty manage their commonwealths and their groups of corporate countries, and they have perfected formulas that keep people in line, that keep the revenue coming up, and keep a relative stability most of the time. Now, the only thing that interferes with that are wars, because wars really change things, and they're very, very devastating to the people who are part, or it just devastates everybody. It can actually devastate an economy for decades after. It could also be a night and day. It can transform an economy from a dead economy to a vibrant one overnight. But this social credit system, to put it back into perspective, you have to see that it stems from the Vatican. The 21st Century Social Compact. What do I mean by the 21st Century Social Compact? What I mean by is that if you go to my website, as I mentioned, jeffreymatt.com, I have a segment that's called Business Goal, World Social Credit System, Not Just China. And in this segment, I have pictures of articles and people who are in the process of putting this entire infrastructure together. From a theological / business, and I want to focus on the business because I do not have knowledge and I don't feel comfortable talking about the theological approach and because that's their job. That's the Vatican and the Holy Father's job to oversee the doctrines and to disseminate wisdom and knowledge to his employees of the presidents of state of all the countries of the world. That's his job, to go to his employees and to see how they're doing and what's going on and give them advice and insight as how they should proceed. That's why he has a business desk, and he invites all the heads of state to that desk, and that's where a diplomatic exchange and a business exchange occur. But on my site for the social credit system, the Pope and the Fortune magazine, there's a global forum that he addressed. I think it was in the end of 2016, and the name of the article on the Fortune magazine online is called Watch Pope Francis Address Global Business Leaders. Now, it's a short video. It's just a few minutes, and the Holy Father is very accommodating, and he's thanking all the world business leaders for their participation for a few-day either a retreat or business retreat of some kind. And he has a short speech, and he says one of the excerpts of it is the 21st century challenge is forging a new social compact. Well, what I find so fascinating about all this is that I couldn't make the connection between the social credit system in China and what the Holy Father is saying. Well, since the name of the article, he's addressing the global business leaders, this must be a business meeting. And in this business meeting, he's explaining to him what he would like to see as the business plan moving forward. Now, later on, a few months later, or within a few months of this, unfortunately, my mind is going blank. I don't know if it was before or after. I think it was after this. I think it was in 2017. Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook CEO, visited the Holy Father, and then a few months, and then there was obviously a business exchange of some kind, a dissemination of wisdom and knowledge, from a business standpoint. And later on, Mark Zuckerberg had a speech at Harvard University. I guess it's a commencement speech, and one of the things that he was discussing was in his speech is that it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. And also, it sort of opens the door to basic income, where everybody should have, a chance to be able to do what they want or need to do. And so it opens the door as well to universal basic income. But I just find it interesting, the correlation between the social compact and the social contract and the Chinese social credit system, because there is a connection between all three. Now, if Mr. Zuckerberg came up with that by himself on his own, that's actually quite possible, but I don't know, something tells me I don't think it was. I think he retained components from his business interactions with the Holy Father, and he moved forward with a new program, a business approach, and this moves on and on into other realms. The other gentleman, Mr. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, he also visited the Holy Father, and quite recently, I would say not even a few weeks ago, there was an article that was on CNN where all the data that everybody has with their iPhones and the iCloud and everything, it was all brought to a head in the article, stating that the data itself will be migrated and transferred from wherever it was, I think it was in America, to China. So if that's being the case, the Chinese social credit system now will include hundreds of millions of new cases of personal profiles and personal data to help increase, accelerate, and augment the adaptation and learning and business comparisons between different cultural groups, and it's all going to be centralized in China. And so the article itself came out, I think it was February 26th or 28th. I think it was February 28th, and the name of the article is "Apple is Under Fire for Moving iCloud Data to China." Now, these things, and also Mr. Cook also made a reference in a short tech video where he references God and the importance. And so I also am willing to make a leap of faith that this gentleman also took very seriously what the Holy Father had to say. The Holy Father is the CEO of one of the oldest, if not the most powerful corporate entity on the face of the earth that is publicly known. And it's his job is to help stabilize the business operations of 8 billion people with his group of C9 cardinals. There's a group called C9. You can go look that up. And so this is information that is not going to be on the mainstream news, and I'm giving you my synopsis of my observations. This is not designed to be a critique or to be a dissenting. The motivation is not to promote dissent or protest. It's there to help you understand what's happening, how this business model is being rolled out. The best way I can give you an example at my lair, because I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm not a forensic, internationally world authority on the social credit system. And if you meet someone who says they're an international world authority and they have the forensic background to do it, they better know what they're talking about, because most people, this is too fresh, it's too raw of an information for someone to have that level. There's only a handful of people on earth that are doing their PhD on this, and you can count them on one hand. Now that's going to change over the next year, but that's basically where we are at on March 28th, 2018. So, and there's even a patent of, if it's not the entire social credit system, it is a large component that you can look up yourself. It's a patent basically that Facebook owns. It's an authorization and authentication based on an individual social network. I think the patent number is US 9100400B2, and it was the date of the patent was August 4th, 2015. It's a long, dry document, which I'm not interested in going into any more detail. But for those of you out there who are real diehard and you want to know, well, this is all talk, where's the proof? Well, there's an example that you can go research yourself. As well as, so that's one of the components of the social credit system of Facebook. And also there's an article too as well. Facebook has a patent technologies to help lenders discriminate against borrowers based on social connections. So if you know somebody who's got a real big loudmouth and they want to go out and start protests and they want to go out there and start wreaking havoc in the street and destroying property and fight the government and fight and protest, I guarantee you're not going to do well if you know these people. You're going to want to cut them off from you big time, because you're not going to be able to get a loan to go to school. You're not going to be able to get a loan to get a car. You're not going to be able to find lodging to your satisfaction if you hang out with people who go around and are dissenters and who create problems, and then you get stuck with a broken life or a criminal record, plus you destroyed property or you got involved with the wrong people. You're going to find out that the social credit system blacklist is probably not going to be very forgiving. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to enjoy luxuries of the new system. And so this is something that you need to keep in mind. There's also another article about Facebook saying that your Facebook friends could be your ticket to your next loan. If you know a whole bunch of people and they're all engineers, or they're all doctors, or they're all lawyers, or there's a combination that they're all favorably their status is very favorable in the next decade or so, your social credit rating will be very high. Now, as automation comes into place, it's going to be difficult to transition into this. So now it's going to be different. It's going to be, what do you do with your time? Are you going back to school? Okay, well, that gives you some points. Are you in the honors class? Well, that gives you some points. Are you working with the university to help build the university campus garden or something like that? Are you involved with projects? Are you a mentor of some kind? That's going to give you points. So there is an upside to the social credit system. If you play ball, you're going to do great. For those of you who've heard of Star Trek: The Next Generation, try to imagine this example. You are Star Trek: The Next Generation has a world where there's no money, and your contribution dictates your rank in life. If you choose to educate yourself to become a pilot, you're not going to ever get paid to be a pilot, but they have a system where you can educate yourself and you can use the technologies to promote space travel or promote enhanced agricultural techniques. It's not going to be 100% AI right away. It's going to take a few years, maybe a few decades before it reaches the point they don't need anybody. And they can't really implement it that way. They probably already have the technology where they don't need anybody already. From a worker labor standpoint, they don't really need anybody. They could build it because of the military technology. It's not declassified yet. It always takes about 50 to 75 plus years before these technologies get declassified, and then they become a commercial product, and then they get their return on investment. It's just a simple business process. There's nothing mysterious or they're holding back because they hate America or they hate the people. There's nothing to do with that. It's just business. It's just business. And one of the biggest things too, it's one of the most important questions I've been able to come up with, and I hope you understand this question for what it really actually means. Who owns the internet? Who owns it? The internet does not, if you Google it, or if you go into Bing, or you go into Yahoo or DuckDuckGo or Start Page, whatever it is that you use, There is no clear definitive answer. Though people will say, oh, that's ICANN that does it, the international, anyways, I forget what the abbreviation stands for, but ICANN is a registry. But the thing is that it's so well orchestrated at that level that you have to register your website. Again, in a world of the platform for humanity is communism. If you don't own property and you don't own land and you don't own a car because it's registered, do you honestly think if you own a company and you have a website, you actually own that website? You do not own anything, including your website. You can pay to have a registration of it and to have fair use of it, but you do not own anything. And so if you want to have a better understanding of the social credit system, you need to ask yourself a very important question. Who owns the internet? If you know the answer, please get in touch with me. I'd love to see how you're able to confirm and conclude all this, because it's going to be very important for the future generations to come. Because the world is a business. Everything that we all do every day is oriented around business. What am I going to eat today? Where do I go have my breakfast? Is it at home or is it at the restaurant? I'm going to an office later. I'm going to work and take a car, and that's a commercial car. It's registered to the state. That's why you have license plates, as I mentioned earlier, to the province or state or country you're in. You're using the state's property to do what you need to do. So the social credit system already exists, but your mindset hasn't. And now your behaviors in the car, let's say, for example, you enjoy cigarettes and you just smoke 6 packs a day because that's just what you do. That's none of my business. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But the social credit system is going to intervene. The artificial intelligence is going to notice that you buy and smoke 6 packs a day. Your iPhone, your car monitoring, the GPS. If you throw your cigarette butts out in the wrong place, you dispose of them incorrectly, your social credit will be impacted. So it's going to be about your behavior and who you interface with, who you interact with, and what you say and what you do. That's really where it comes down to. But then the question will come up. Well, then where does this all come from? And even with my presentation to you today, my observation, there is unfortunately the possibility I may not be 100% accurate, and there's unfortunately the possibility that I'm missing major components that really explains the whole story. But one question I've noticed that nobody's asking is who owns the internet and where's the clear answer for it? There's somebody out there in the business world, and I've been in a lot of business meetings, I've been in a lot of conferences. I've been around Fortune 500 CIOs and CEOs as a service individual, where I'm nobody of any significance, but I would serve them under specific circumstances in the tech world. And I know for sure that some of these people are generally good individuals, and some of them don't care and they're just interested in the almighty dollar. But there's some business meeting somewhere where somebody's laughing as hard as they possibly can. Those belly laughs, or you're laughing so hard. I can't believe it that we're 2018 and nobody's asking the question, who owns the internet? And nobody's even bothering to waste time to think about it. That's how conditioned and programmed and behaviorally indoctrinated all 8 billion of us are. I've met architects, software engineers. They don't know. They'll just tell me it's ICANN and other outfits, but that doesn't mean they own it. Who is the CEO? Who owns the title? Who owns the patent? And then they'll say, well, that's actually the Department of Defense. It's ARPANET, and there's a handful of guys who put it together. It was to help in case there was thermonuclear disaster or war, and so we still need to be able to communicate from long distances in case there was an unfortunate event for humanity where there's that horrible outcome. It still doesn't answer the question, who today, March 28th, 2018, owns the internet? Because if you know who owns it, then you can go out and put out a special program in the 21st century called Forging a New Social Compact. Then you can go and issue business directives to your technocrats out there, saying, "Look, you know, you need to redirect your social network. We're going to help put into place a business model that's going to fit with our economic models around the world, where the citizenry, the consumer, interfaces it in a way that we feel is the most efficient. It's also going to have other multiple benefits where your behavior will be taken into consideration if you are a valued customer or you're a hostile customer. And that's going to be at every level, whether you're a valued customer at Burger King or if your corporate country values you as a citizen. If they don't, if you make the wrong moves and you make the wrong decisions, you're being recorded 24/7. And one day to the next, literally, you can go from I can't travel, I can travel, to I can no longer travel. You can also be someone who has money, who's accumulated money or inherited money. Wow, what if you inherited millions of dollars, but you are a little rebellious person, and you go and you make all the wrong moves, start protesting this and that, and you get arrested or whatever. Let's say someone's really makes some silly decisions, irresponsible choices, and then they want to hire a lawyer. Down the road, it's not going to be in 2018, down the road, you won't be able to use your money. Why? Because of cryptocurrency. The social credit system is going to have a direct link with digital currency. Right now, you could be the most rotten person on the face of the earth, but if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash in your mattress, you can do what you want. You can buy cars, you can travel, you can do anything you want, as long as don't have a record preventing you, if you haven't been caught or something like that. You're not going to, you can do, the flexibility is incredible. There's a reason why they call it a black market. Well, now that black market's going to be completely eliminated, or very, very close to eliminated. If you want to buy something on Craigslist and avoid taxes and get it used and get it in good condition, get it at a much lower price than retail, if you honestly think that you're going to be able to do that for the next 150 years, think again. The social credit system will tag every transaction you ever do, and who's going to automate the taxable component of that? Your local revenue agency of some kind, the Canadian Revenue Agency, the IRS if you're in the United States, whatever it is in your country. All those cash deals. I want to get my friend a train set for his little boy. I wanted to get a used secondhand stroller because I love repurposing and I'm an eco person. And you want to get it for $15 instead of $120 new with minor usage. Well, all those transactions will be taxed. You'll be no more cash sales eventually. Eventually that's going to be phased out. So there's not going to be hardly any black market anymore. So what's going to happen is that you're not going to have alternatives. So you got to be on your A game from now on for the rest of your life, and there's going to come a day where your behavior will impact your children's credit rating. And when that occurs, that's when it's going to start hitting home. If you're in your teens, you don't care. You're not interested in having 6 babies at 18 years old or 3 babies or having a family. Most people don't want a family at 18 or 16 years old or 22 years old. They want to have fun. And the average age of having a child now is increasing, and it's increasing, and it's increasing. And if you are a belligerent, criminal, juvenile detention type material of some kind, and you have a child, you are going to be under a lot of pressure because the AI system doesn't ever take a rest. It doesn't ever close its eyes. The satellites with the GPS, they don't go on vacation. Right? They don't take vacations. They don't go on strike because they're not getting paid enough. And robots don't do the same either. They don't take sick days. NORAD doesn't take a sick day. Artificial intelligence doesn't ask for a 6-hour shift because it's the right thing to do. It's 24/7 forever. So this is a harvesting program, and there are benefits to this social credit system. I would say one of the benefits is that you can really have an incredible life of education and contribution. If you educate yourself and you make contributions on your education, you help yourself and other people, you can really do quite well. But the other thing too that you have to keep in mind is that the technologies that are going to be used to put together this social credit system, one of the today's technologies is going to change, of course, over time, is called 5G. And on my website, I have pictures that demonstrate what a 5G device might look like, ranging from the emitters that you would see attached to a telephone pole. Also, too, there's articles that the Trump administration is considering building a 5G network to counter cyber spying. There's all kinds of materials out there that's going to help paint a picture for you where you don't need me and you can figure this out on your own without me. But I tried to give you an introduction to what's going to happen. And it could turn into a very difficult transition for the human family, primarily based on two reasons. Most people do not understand what's coming. And number two, they don't have the knowledge to interpret what's coming right now. They don't have the education or the knowledge. Why? Because I'll give you an example. This has been going on for hundreds of years, but just for this particular recording, in 1989, Dr. Shirley McCune, Shirley Shirley, and McCune is MCCUNE. Go look her up on YouTube. She was basically a top dog in the education field for America for, help implement the concepts of what we call today Common Core education. It's not designed. The new education system was revised many, many times, and it will continue to be revised. But for the last 30 years or more, it was moving away from knowledge and moving towards behaviors, collective behavior patterns. So what happens is that if you think about what I just said, that the education system is designed around behavior patterns versus knowledge and facts, what that tells me is that the business plan to roll out these technologies, to roll out the social credit system, to transform the way that the human's value is altered to you being the valuable item. And that's not going to be for a long time. That's going to last probably a few decades, and then the human value is going to lower again, because right now they need brain scans. They need donations to have your genome sequenced, your individual genome sequenced. They've got it down from $1 million per sequencing down to 1,000. Now it's probably below 1,000. And eventually you'll be able to see all the genetic pluses and minuses in your family history, what you're susceptible to. But they need all this so that they can have a database of minds, of personalities, and genetic data so that they can reproduce the human family in other parts of the cosmos. Because somebody who doesn't have a 9-to-5 job, who has more money than they'll ever be able to spend, has the time to think about these things. This is what I was saying, is that most people will not be able to be honest with themselves and say, yes, pull me out of my job at the mall or at the local office, and I will help manage all 8 billion people starting tomorrow morning. And I'll be an absolute superstar. I'll be the Michael Jordan of that. You've got to be kidding me. The people who have this knowledge, they haven't worked a day of their lives in the traditional sense. They work, but not the same way you do. Their education is based on knowledge and facts. That's why the Vatican has a sacred science division. The word sacred science is my words, but they have their own observatories. They have their own pontifical science academies. They have divisions that specifically manage and interface with all the technologies and the technological world with artificial intelligence and robotics. These people are very serious business people. They have a lot of knowledge and a lot of power, and they're not playing around. So, and if you're going to manage 8 billion people, you've got to be on top of all of this. Forget what you believe in. Forget all the YouTube stuff, all the Jay-Z stuff, all the hand signals. Oh my God, it's a Masonic handshake. Forget all of that. Move on. And look at the business model that you live under today. You are a consumer. You are a product on the stock exchange. And if you don't believe me, there's about 40 or 50 countries that are on the New York Securities Exchange. And you can go look that up yourself. And so the social credit system has been in place for a long time, but now with automation and artificial intelligence and the new social compact that's being disseminated from the Holy Father and the Vatican himself is now being disseminated to the world business leaders, and the titans of technology are now implementing that business plan. It's going to come into place very soon in a way that you're not going to perceive. And there are still articles being put out in the news saying in China, people who are jaywalking, they get fined and they get put on a screen, but they don't say social credit system. They don't explain that part to you, and they leave it out on purpose. They want to help you understand that that's what's coming, and that they don't want to scare you with the idea that 800 million jobs will be lost in the next 12 years. And that's Fortune magazine, not me. And let's say they made a mistake. Let's say it's only 400 million jobs around the world that are lost to automation. That would be everybody in Canada, everybody in the US, and a good chunk of Mexico that would have no job whatsoever. None. Zero. Unemployed, baby. So if you spread that out all over the world, that's going to be a lot of people. And the education system is not designed about knowledge. And one of the other reasons why, for those who think ahead in multiple decades, if not hundreds of years, is that they don't need you to know anything. That's where AI comes in. AI will take care of knowing everything for you and giving you suggestions. And it'll reorder your milk for you, and it'll tell you if you're making a mistake. You don't actually need to know anything. So another goal of this recording is to help you understand that there's only a very small handful of people who are going to listen to this, who will understand what I'm saying, who are going to be able to see beyond the idea that this is not an episode of The Simpsons, and this is not Dancing with the Stars, that this is just basically neutral observation of the potential outcome of maintained ignorance and behavioral indoctrination, interfacing with a system that's going to be directly related to good behavior with privileges and benefits. So it's going to be a clash. You know, couples and families, the whole dynamic of the family will change enormously. Women will now be asking men, instead of what do you do for a living, is what's your score? There is an upside, though, too, for those who will still be able to procreate and have children. You'll be able to spend possibly more time with your children so you can be with them more often and have more of a role in the upbringing of your children under certain circumstances. I see that as a big plus, because I see a lot of families will send their children away to daycare, and that's not to belittle anybody. It's just a fact of life. It's very difficult. You know, one salary doesn't cover all the bills. There's a lot of mothers out there that would love to stay home with the child or the father and just have one person work. But it's a culturally understood thing to send your child to daycare as early as 1 year old or 2 or 3, and to help them become socially adapted to what's coming for the rest of their life. So but it's just an idea that I'm just trying to present to you, that there's going to be a social impact. Dating will be changed, reproduction will be changed, and as the time goes by, 5G is a cellular technology that uses a frequency that's similar to what an airport scanner is. And so what that means is that if they want to interface with the grid, they can see what are in your pockets, they can see through your clothes, possibly in the street, they'll be able to see through your clothes in the street. So if you think that you're going to get away with something in this new system, you better think again. So if you're an angel and you don't make mistakes, and you never lash out, and you never get angry, and you don't ever make mistakes, and you know how to hide all your emotions, then you will be able to trick every AI facial recognition software, and you know how to alter your voice where there's no deception whatsoever. Then you'll be able to beat layered voice software, where they can sense deception in as little as 2 words, where you don't have to be tied up to anything. And if you're really, really good, you'll be able to control your pupil dilation, and you'll be able to overcome the eye detect software, where it can detect deception based on your responses with your eye dilation. So for those of you who have these capabilities, kudos to you. And I think that that's very, very good for those people. But from a business standpoint, this is what I want to get back to. It's just a business plan. All this silly nonsense, it's about the devil, or it's the evil government. It's not the evil government. It's a business. Everybody who runs the government has a family, has a mother and father, or has relatives, or a loved one, or cousins or sisters or brothers, or some sort of social network. These are people who run the government. The people who are in the Vatican, who worked their entire lives to become a bishop, cardinal, or the pope, they worked very hard to get those positions. They are people. And so when you demonize your own brothers and sisters, you have lost big time, because if someone else does it to you, that's their problem. But for you, your own integrity, if I go and I automatically demonize everybody, of course we all have judgments, but to stay as neutral as possible within reason, even I struggle with that, but it's an effort I try to exercise every day. I don't want to denigrate everybody in the world, because it'll make me feel better, because I don't know enough. I don't understand what's actually going on this planet. I don't know who I am. So what I do is I demonize someone in a certain religion or in a certain group. Got to be kidding me. And I understand this message is not going to be pleasant for 99.99999% of the entire human family. I already know that. But for that point, whole bunch of zeros, 0.1000%, who understand what I'm talking about, you now have a several-year window to prepare yourself for the transition from I have a job to I no longer have a job. And I can't get a new job because they're being automated too quickly. And I can look at universities, I can see what kind of programs they have, I can look at what's coming up, what kind of careers I could go into. Gerontology is an interesting career where you assist and help the elderly. It doesn't mean it's the difficult work where if they're if they're not able to take care of themselves, you can just spend time with the people. You're going to be old one day, and these people who are elderly, they're important, because one day you're going to be old, and you don't want to be left alone and abandoned. So gerontology is going to be a very interesting career to consider and to look at. Creativity, being an artist, human interactions. Unfortunately, though, I have my reservations. I suspect psychology and psychiatry are going to explode all over again because of AI. They're going to send people to your home, because in the future, there's not going to be as many strip malls. There's not going to be 18,000 chain stores everywhere. They're all going to close because you're going to be ordering everything through the internet. That's why I keep saying, who owns the internet? Start understanding the business plan. If you don't know who owns the land, you can complain until the end of time. You'll never get anywhere. Who owns your car? It's me. No, it's not you. Who owns your house? It's not you. It's the state. It's the local city that you're in. So then you need to ask yourself the question, who owns the internet? Because the internet will log every purchase that you'll ever make for the rest of your life. Right now, it's just a portion of your life, but it's going to become every part of your life, your children's lives, and your grandchildren's lives, until finally the human family can no longer reproduce without intervention from technology / corporate government. And that's where the transition is going to take place towards a synthetic life, which is really where it's all going. And there's going to be hundreds of millions of people who are going to collapse in this new system psychologically. They're not going to be able to handle it. And there's going to be a lot of problems socially. And those problems need to be addressed. So the people who run the planet understand this, and they're going to create an option for you. And there is a component of compassion in there. Unfortunately, though, if you don't understand the business model, abuse will fall into place again. It's called assisted suicide. And assisted suicide is the trend that nobody's talking about. I've never heard anybody in the alternative world sit down and explain to me the significance and the importance of assisted suicide. Very recently, I heard Alex Jones sort of talk about it. He may have, talked about it before in the past, but I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on assisted suicide and help people understand the impacts of that and where it's all going and why it's going to be one of the biggest business models ever known to the humankind. And there are incredible, incredible dangers to that. Even though you can have a much more peaceful passing if you're suffering or you're in pain, if you can't handle the situation, assisted suicide will do a lot for you to help ease the transition from a painful daily life into whatever realm we go into next. But at the same time, I'm going to ask you two questions. Do you know the law around the world right now as it stands? The answer, if you're honest with yourself, is no. The reason why you cannot say yes is because there are hundreds of millions of laws in every country around the world. And it is technically, physiologically, psychologically, emotionally impossible to follow every law around the world. And with that being said, if you don't know the laws right now, can you answer the question, do you know what the law was 50 years ago around the world? Not just your country, your corporate country, but around the world. Do you know what the laws are going to be 50 years from now or 100 years from now? The chances of someone having the personal arrogance to say, of course I'll know what the laws will be 200 years from now, make sure that you never contact me. And so at the same time, because I don't want to be around that kind of mindset, this is very important to understand. When you upload your mind and you get an MRI and a PET scan and a SPECT scan and an EEG, it's a recording of your personality. They can see pictures in your mind. They can decode the memory infrastructures, the neural branches in your brain. They can interface with your personality on a numeric level, on a digital level. And then the cloning technology has grown over the decades. And that growth of the cloning, they even have a cloning, company out in China. So with that being said, it's very important for you to understand these concepts that if you upload your mind and if you have donated your DNA, you have your genome sequenced, they're going to have access to your personality, to your genetics, and they can reconstitute that in a clone. If they want to, they can reproduce 10, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 people. They'll have the technology to do it. You know, when you have self-sustaining electricity with wind and solar and all these technologies, you can set up centers that can produce 1,000,000 clones of humans per, 1,000,000, maybe 1,000 a day. In 10 days, you have 10,000 new embryos that are being grown. And then however long it takes to grow the clone to maturity, and then after that you can plug it into another sort of technology that you can upload a personality into it. This is the significance of psychology and psychiatry. The psychologists and psychiatrists mean well. They want to help people recover. They want to help people through their difficulties, their life challenges. But on the back end of the system, they have every file, every possible thing that you're willing to volunteer about yourself. And now they can go through the data, decades and decades of data from psychiatrists and psychologists. This is a business model. and they can say, well, what are the most resilient types of personalities there are out there. They can create a synthesized personality of the most stable 1,000 people that they have in their database, and they can create sort of like an artificial personality, and they can upload it into the brain matter, and so that the person is not emotionally unstable, immature, a clumsy idiot. It can start off, and it also too, there are programs out there, business programs, to increase the IQ 15 points per generation in China. I think there's an article on Vice that talks about that. So when you think about these technologies and you think about the trends, the scientific trends of assisted suicide, of synthetic life, of the business program to help people cope with the transition from unemployment to you being the product, and your behavior and your contributions make you a valuable consumer, a valuable citizen. It'll help you with your personal relationships. It'll help you deal with the corporate country that you're living in. You need to take into consideration a lot of these factors. And then when you go back and you look at the articles on all the news sites about the social credit system, you'll see a different picture. It's not going to be, oh, they're jaywalking and there's a picture of them on the street sign as the latest jaywalkers of the week. You're going to understand where this business model is going towards. You'll understand it. You'll also understand that protesting has almost no value, and fighting it has almost no value. Education and building your own integrity up as much as possible, and keeping in mind that your behavior does count, and it's going to count a lot more. You're not going to be able to behave as you wish and reap all the rewards from all the points programs. They're all going to merge into your own profile, and they'll be part of you from that point on. It may be much quicker than you realize. So with that being said, I'm going to finish up today. And I'm going to thank you for your patience and your time. Please make sure that you check out my website and look at the pictures of what I'm trying to explain to you in this recording. Because although I strayed a little bit about the social credit system, I went to other directions, I did it on purpose. I did it to help you understand the nature of what's coming down the pipe. And that the people at the top, they're simply implementing a business program. These are business people conducting business. And if you don't like what they're doing, or you don't like what's happening, then it's up to you to educate yourself, and then either get a job working for them and see if you can make an alteration, or you can make changes in your personal life to minimize that impact. You can make different kinds of decisions on what kind of consumer you're going to be, the type of people you're going to interact with, the types of friends you want to have around you, because I can assure you, you'll be spending a lot of time dumping people off of your network if they're rebellious or they are too controversial. And this is one last thing I do want to say. The future of internet searches will be completely different than they are today. They'll be completely different. The people who are going to be really savvy and really smart, when they go into their internet AI interface, they're going to ask questions like this. AI, or whatever the name of the company is, Google or whatever, can you find me the most authentic, honest, integrity-filled, accurate people that talk about how the world actually works? The people who helped expose the way the business model of the world works. Instead of getting 1,000 websites where they're asking for donations and let's keep me stay alive, and they're selling products and they're selling trinkets or something like that, you will have a new type of search. It's going to be on credibility, and it's going to be factored into the future of AI internet. And keep that in mind when you listen to YouTube videos or you read articles. It's very difficult to know credibility from people. But the layered voice analysis, it detects truth instantly right now. You know, police departments use it, courtrooms use it, the military uses it, governments use it, intelligence uses it. What makes you think it's not going to finally reach down to the public? So when you do searches in the future, all the trash and circus websites out there, media circus and fake news, it'll all fall away because people will do truth searches. They'll do fact searches. They'll do neutral searches. They'll do observational searches. They're going to want to know, why was it so crazy in the 21st century, in the 20th century? They're going to want to know who knew what was going on. And so understand that your behavior is very important. If you sit there and you lie day in, day out on your YouTube channel, or you just because you want to get money, you know, you won't, you'll be remembered as someone who just didn't, you know, you're going to have an interesting outcome because you'll be filtered out. And the people who have credibility will be filtered in. And that's something I hope I can leave you with as a concept that makes sense to you, that you can see the future of knowledge for those who will have access to it, who will have earned the privilege to do these searches, which may not be everybody, but you'll understand that there's something to what I'm saying. Thank you for your time, and until next time.